Hey, what's up, everybody? We're back on a Friday night, and we are live chatting with you guys because we've got a great show for you tonight. Lucasfilm and Disney made an announcement, a big announcement, where they had a ton of Star Wars projects. In fact, there are so many Star Wars projects that were named that we decided, you know what? We're dedicating the whole show to it because there's just too many things to do anything else. So we're going to basically come in, we're going to do these one by one, and it's going to come at you right now.
You're listening to Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Two fans, two generations, all things Star Wars begins now.
All right, hello, everybody. I'm Eric Vansel.
And I'm Daryl Sanders.
And we're your hosts for this show. Sorry, we had to do the cheesy intro. Had to do it. So I thought you were going to lose it.
Almost.
But you did keep your composure. That was good. That was good. But yeah, man, it's been a kind of an interesting week for Star Wars, I think.
Man, an interesting week, interesting day. Man, we have so much stuff to talk about.
Oh, tell me about it. Well, we got some of our people coming in chatting already. Hey, Ronaldo, what's going on?
Ronaldo,
good to see you.
Yes, sir. Yorgie Smorgy, what's going on?
Hey, it's good to see, a bunch of people. I'm really glad that's one of the things that I love about the fact that we do these shows live now.
Yeah.
It's like ever since we started doing them live, it's great. We get that interaction going and,
people get to join in and give their comments and
I mean,
their perspectives on stuff.
Exactly. It becomes more of a discussion rather than just us,
blabbering
present it to people. Yeah. But the thing that's interesting to me about this whole thing was, and this is what was happening, by the way, guys, is that we were getting ready to put together the show because usually we put together the show topics, like on the Tuesday or whatever before our live show. And I remember I was just reading that Disney and Lucasfilm, they were going to do that whole investors meeting thing and that they were probably going to announce quite a few Star Wars projects.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, you know what? Maybe we better hold off until until they announced it. And then when they did, it's like,
man, they dropped the bomb.
Big bomb. So, I mean, it's a good thing that we didn't, come up with anything else because I don't think we would have had time.
Oh, no way. No way.
All right. Well, let's get into it, guys. It's going to be our main topic today. All right, so we're in our main topic. We're basically talking about Lucasfilm, Disney announced just a boatload of new projects that they've got coming on the horizon. And I'll tell you, I was really surprised by how many series they were coming out with.
Man, oh my goodness. I mean, you know what? It's funny because I was actually thinking about this, like, as all this stuff was being released. And you remember when we were actually like, man, why hasn't Lucasfilm giving us anything? Where's the casting Andor? Where's this? Where's that?
Yeah.
And they're like, are you happy now? Yes, we are.
It's like, oh, you want some? All right, we'll give you some.
Yeah, Merry Christmas to us.
You dropped a bomb on me.
I was thinking about it. Definitely got to listen to the Gap Band on the way home.
Well, I mean, and like you said, I mean, we knew about Obi-Wan. We knew about Cassian Andor. We suspected Ahsoka.
Right.
We suspected a lot of these different things, but I really didn't expect a lot of, and then there was that, I keep forgetting that woman's name, Leslie Headley or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
The one that's going to end up doing the Acolyte series.
Yeah.
We knew about that too, but see, what was surprising to me about this
we thought she was doing Ahsoka, I think.
No, because remember, she was going to be doing, they said that she's going to be doing an almost, it was going to be more based on geography than characters, and you and I didn't get a chance to talk about it. That was the one that Dave and I did.
Oh, okay.
So it was almost like an Indiana Jones meets Star Wars kind of thing. Yeah. So, it was, but again, I mean, it's like there's so many things that they put out that I was really surprised. I was surprised by the sheer number of things they put out there, and I was surprised by some of the content that they were putting out there.
Yeah, I mean, there was some big surprises. Lando, that was a big one. I mean, we'll get into them all in a minute, but
yeah, I mean, basically, just so you guys know, the format that we're going to go through tonight is we're going to basically take pretty much all the projects, and we're just going to go through them one by one. We're going to get your thoughts on them. Of course, if you're watching the rebroadcast, leave your comments in the comments section. And hey, if you guys like this video, and you want to see more of our content, be sure to hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the notification bell so you know when we're coming out with new stuff.
Every button you see on here, except for the dislike.
Yeah, right. Yes.
Don't hit that one.
Don't hit the dislike button because, you don't want to miss it. I mean, Monday we're going to be doing our Mandalorian episode 7 review.
Yep.
Which, you had a chance to see that, right?
Yep, I did.
Okay. Well, that's about all we're going to say about it.
Exactly.
But yeah, it was good. I loved it. That's your preview. But yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking maybe, we'll go through each one of the stuff and everything like that. But what were you were about to say something was surprising you or something?
Well, yeah, man, I was just surprised by some of the things like, Lando, and there's some other shows that I'm like, this is interesting. I wonder what this is going to be. And as I start reading stuff, I'm like, wow, okay. And they're kind of dipping into the High Republic.
Yeah, that.
And I was like,
that was
the one. I was like, uh-oh.
Yeah, that one, I have to admit, that one shocked me a little bit.
Yeah, especially since and then that's another thing, like the books come out in like, probably a couple of weeks, probably. Well, no, actually it's at the end of January. So we actually I think it's the end of January. So we have the month, but still, those new High Republic books are going to be on the release too.
Well, and that's what's interesting to me, because remember when we were talking, we did a whole show on the High Republic. I'll leave a link in the comment section. But basically, I remember one of the things that we were saying was it would be cool if they would parlay this now into a series, a movie, something. Because as much as they're fleshing this out in the books, and I understand that when you're dealing with a brand new era like this, sometimes it might be better, especially with Disney's track record lately, that, hey, listen, flesh this thing out in the books, do the world building basically in the books and the comics and whatever, and then start to introduce, when people start to get a little bit of a flavor for each of the characters, maybe introduce it. But it sounds like not only are they coming out with something that's set in the High Republic, what interested me was it was set toward the end of the High Republic.
Right. So they already have the end in mind.
Well, not only that, but what I'm thinking that they're trying to do is prevent any kind of a continuity. Like, they don't want to trap the writers.
Exactly. Now, there's two things that kind of actually disappointed me. So as happy as and ecstatic as I was for this, two things kind of disappointed me. One, we didn't get any movies named, like official movies. We got series, but we didn't get any movies.
There was a movie. Yeah, you're right. It was Patty Jenkins that's going to do it, but we don't know.
Is that a movie or a series?
No, it's a movie.
Okay.
She's doing the next movie, and it's coming out in 2023.
Okay.
So it escapes me which one it was, though.
Rogue Squadron.
Yes.
That's the one
That's it.
Okay, so that's
that's
one of my babies.
Yeah.
So the other one is that we didn't get the release of Taika Waititi's film.
Well, yeah, but the other thing too is that and I know they said that he was going to be doing something. The other thing that was noticeably absent too, by the way, was the Rian Johnson trilogy that everybody keeps swearing is on. But and you know what else they admitted that was really surprising to me was the Boba Fett series. Yeah,
I was going to mention that too. I was surprised that wasn't actually mentioned. So that's got me wondering.
Yeah, because, there was all these rumors that they were going to start shooting it like before the end of the year. And it's like, okay, if any series is going to be ready to, well, maybe not because they're going to start shooting. But still, you'd think that if that announcement was made, that they would have at some point put it on the release schedule or whatever. Because remember, the whole idea, at least what was rumored, I don't know how much of this part was actually confirmed. But what was rumored was that this Boba Fett prequel series or whatever was going to go in between Mandalorian season 2 and 3. So essentially what was going to happen was you were going to get the end of season 2, which is like next week basically. And then maybe some people were speculating like a spring or a summer release. So you'd get this Boba Fett prequel, which would probably be like, 4 episodes or something. And then they would drop Mandalorian season 3. So, let's see. Ronaldo says, what surprised me is it didn't say at least the name of the Taika Waititi movie. Yeah, I mean, that was one of the things that surprised me too. It's like, if you're going to drop the bomb that he's going to be doing something, why not at least, tell us what it is?
Right.
I mean, why do you think that was the case?
I don't know. I think they're still in development, or I think it's maybe it's a bigger bomb that they want to save for another day. That's only thing I can really think of.
Yeah, that could be.
I mean, maybe they need to hold off on some things, because it's like, all right, if you're bringing in someone like him, especially with what he's done with Marvel, and some of his other projects, I'm thinking that perhaps his is a bigger story than maybe say like a Rogue Squadron, and that's something they need to hold off until maybe like the next celebration or something like that.
They could. I mean, another thing that I was thinking might be the case too is that maybe there's certain things that need to be, like, maybe whatever story he's going to tell might need some of these other series or movies or whatever to come out, and then it'll make a little bit, like, it'll make a greater impact. But I mean, certainly, these are minor complaints, everybody.
Oh, yeah, of course.
They gave us way more than I expected. I was expecting maybe the Boba Fett announcement, which we didn't get. I was expecting Obi-Wan a little bit more, the Andor series, Bad Batch, because they did touch on that a little bit. It's like basically some of these things that we've known were in development for a long time. These are the kinds of things that I was thinking, okay, this is all we're going to get. I had no idea that.
Yeah, they want to bring all this other stuff up. We just thought we were just going to flesh out pretty much what we already knew, but they've added some.
Yeah, some crazy stuff. And, then there's another thing, too, where now, I mean, it pains me to bring up anything that We Got This Covered brings up, because those guys are, like, notorious for just not being reliable in the least. But I have to say that they did get it right in the sense of there's going to be a C-3PO R2-D2 series of some sort.
Yeah, that.
Now, we don't have any kind of as we're going through all this stuff, we don't. That's why I want to keep this one in the sort of the general. We're warming up to
the big fish.
Yeah, to going through all this stuff. But right now, I just want to get some of the general thoughts from us. I want to get some of your general thoughts on what you're thinking about this. This whole announcement and everything before we actually move on and start getting into each series. So it was interesting to me that, they're going to do something focusing on 3PO and R2. Now,
as if we need anything else.
Well, you can make the argument that A New Hope, in a way, I mean, it's told through their perspective. By the way, Yorgi Smorgy, hello there. Now, Yorgi is actually somebody who has been commenting on some of our stuff. So it's great to actually see you being brought into the chats now. This is good, and we encourage anybody, because there's a lot of people who will comment on a lot of our stuff, but they don't necessarily chat. And I have to say, full disclosure, I watch a lot of YouTube videos, and I'm a fan of a lot of YouTubers and things like that. But I almost never chat. It's like all the stuff that, I mean, it's just one of those things where I'm just thinking, hey, there's just, I mean, why not? So maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll go and I'll chat a little bit more. Okay. So you ready to get into each one of these things one by one?
Yeah, let's go for it.
All right. So here we go. So the first one we're going to talk about is AHSOKA. I think that the AHSOKA one is probably the one that you would expect, out of all these. So AHSOKA was one of the series that we actually expected. I don't think anybody is surprised by this. I don't think when, they said, okay, we're going to do the AHSOKA series, that, people were like, really?
Right.
Except maybe the casual fan. I mean, there's a possibility, because again, we as Star Wars fans are always thinking that everybody's like us, and that people are keeping track of all this stuff. But there's a lot of people that, and this is true even when they heavily advertise stuff. I remember when The Mandalorian was coming out, I was talking to my parents, and they're like, they had no idea. And then they thought it was a Boba Fett thing. And, I mean, it's just the typical things that most casual fans of the series would think. So to actually say that everybody expected it is a little bit maybe an exaggeration. But at the same time, I see that they really timed this whole announcement and everything right around Ahsoka's debut in The Mandalorian.
Oh yeah, sure. I mean, the first thing I actually want to bring up is the actual the imagery that they use for Ahsoka. Did you notice that it's the world between worlds?
I did not.
Yeah,
but that is a good point.
If you look at that, that's the whole world between worlds little map, I guess, star map that they kind of had.
Well, but it makes sense though, because that's pretty much where we left off in Rebels, and I think that, and this is, I think, going to be a recurring theme as
I think they're going to delve into that a lot. I think that's where they're going to really go into kind of what that whole thing was about, and kind of explaining like, okay, maybe she's gone through different portals or whatever to really kind of see how certain things are going to end, or certain things that may be coming, and maybe that's why she's in this particular juncture. Because that's why she's so concerned about Thrawn. So that might be a reason behind that.
Yeah, there's been a lot of speculation that people have brought up in recent weeks, ever since the whole Thrawn thing came out in The Mandalorian, is that a lot of people have assumed that, okay, who are they going to get to play Thrawn in The Mandalorian?
Mm-hmm.
This might be that whole, because remember, a lot of people were saying that the Ahsoka episode in The Mandalorian is really kind of a pre-pilot episode for her series.
Do you think they already have Thrawn already? Like the
Oh, yeah, that's a good question.
Do you think they already have the person?
I have been wondering that the whole time, because on one hand, when you're dropping his name like that, and we went over this a little bit, I think, when we reviewed, well, certainly when we reviewed that episode, but I even think in one of the other discussions, I don't know, we've been doing so many live shows now, it's like, kind of, they're blending together a bit, but I think that it's a possibility that they already have the actor that they're going to have portray, because they dropped him in the Mandalorian series. Now, that could be one of two things. Either they're introducing him because this is where they're bringing the Ahsoka story, and if I remember correctly, Ahsoka is going to take place in the Mandalorian timeline, and which is another thing, by the way, that I thought was really interesting about a lot of these series that they were bringing out, is a lot of them are taking place in that Mandalorian timeline.
Yeah.
Which, of course, is just ripe for crossovers.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Which is, I think, what they're going to do. But, yeah, I'm kind of like where you're at, where I think they have an idea who they're going to have play them. Because there's been a couple of cast members like that where, people were in the speculation mode, like, oh, I wonder who they're going to get to do it. And I mean, the person they're going to get to do it has been locked in for months. They just can't say anything.
Right.
Which, is just horrible.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, Boatwright Family and Comics joins us. Hey, how you doing? It's good to see you again. A lot of times, I know it's like, you come in and you chat and you can't stay for long, but we're glad to have you, and hopefully you can ride out the rest of the night with us tonight, because there's just a lot going on.
Yeah, so we know this is Filoni's baby.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Of course, Ahsoka, so he's going to definitely have his hand on this. He doesn't trust anybody else with Ahsoka outside of himself. Do you think that in the Ahsoka series, we are going to find Ezra?
Yeah, I think there's a good chance. Because, and this is the thing that I was going to present to you too, sort of in a form of a question, but also like as a bit of a, like a side note almost. But it seems to me like Rebels is going to factor in as kind of the central series, that and The Mandalorian. Because a lot of these characters that they're focusing on, basically the last time we saw them was in Rebels.
Yeah.
And they did that whole epilogue where they covered like, hey, here's what everybody's doing after Return of the Jedi. Like I said in one of the previous episodes that we did, they were coming up with it then at Rebels. They were coming up like right at the Mandalorian timeline.
Well, it's funny that because I actually remember the last time I was actually in the studio,
Yeah, it's true. You have been kind of doing this thing from home for a while, you know? It's kind of like
and I was
making me jealous. Like, I got to get dressed and come to the studio. Who knows what you're doing? Like bathrobe and stuff, doing the show. I see how it's going to be.
No. So,
Yeah, last year when you were in the studio.
so I knew you were gonna do that to me.
Hey,
so
I have to.
But no. So we had a conversation about the end of Rebels because we kept trying to figure out like, okay, we couldn't remember like how Ezra left and what happened with him and Thrawn and everything like that.
Yeah, but Jason.
So I went back and actually watched the World Between Worlds. I watched that episode and then everything leading up to the end of Rebels.
Okay.
And I'm like, oh, okay, I forgot. And once again, I forgot how good like those last few episodes really, really were. I'm just like, man. So, of course, you know, they're on Lothal and they're trying to liberate the people, and they almost had him, and then Thrawn shows up and pretty much blocks him. And once again, he kind of shows his superior intellect and strategy because he's like, oh, well, you know, we got all your people in here. We're going to blow them up. He's like, no, actually, you put them all in one central location so I can destroy the city without any Imperial casualties. And they're in there with you. So it's only a few of you versus all of them being in one building. And they're just kind of sitting there like, oh. I mean, right. It's,
hate when that happens.
Yeah, exactly. And you're just kind of like, dang. But that just shows you, like, once again, Thrawn.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, you know, Ezra, though, being as crafty and wily as he is, he kind of had a contingency plan. So, of course, the space will show up. And he gets onto Thrawn's ship, and they get into this whole battle and whatnot. And eventually, those space whales kind of like wrap themselves around the ship, and then they kind of just poof, into hyperspace.
Yeah, that's right. I'd
And
forgotten
so
about
they
that.
didn't, you know, and so of course, you know, AHSOKA appears at the very end of it with Sabine, and it's like, okay, they want to go find Ezra.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's pretty much how Rebels kind of concludes. But they kind of show like what everybody else is doing at the end. Like Sabine had a new haircut and everything like that. She looked more mature, and you know, so did AHSOKA. She kind of looked a little bit more mature as well. And so then they were actually on their whole path to find Ezra. So I could see, looking into the Mandalorian episode, that's probably what she's trying to do. She's probably trying to just get a location on where's Thrawn.
Right, because to her, you find Thrawn, you find Ezra.
Right.
And I think that's what's going to happen in a lot of these situations, is that you're going to find that whole ending of Rebels was key.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is going to be the gateway into some of these series.
Yep.
Ronaldo says, this is a no-brainer. If Disney wants money, the AHSOKA series is the way to go. Yeah. I mean, look at how popular her whole thing was, and, you know, her debut was in The Mandalorian. Everybody went crazy for her. He also goes on to say, I think AHSOKA series will be, in a way, the sequel to Rebels. Yeah, it's looking that way. I'm trying to think of if there's any of the other series they announced that could function as a sequel to Rebels. I mean, there's like 1,000 of them, so.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really curious though, because like I said, they used the World Between Worlds little map, and I remember watching that episode, and then it was actually kind of creepy, you know, just like Palpatine's whole thing, him kind of like reaching in through it and trying to grab Ezra, and but if you notice, like they kind of went through two different portals. They didn't go through the same one together.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I'm thinking of like, okay, well, when AHSOKA shows up at the end of Rebels, like what you see what I'm saying? Like she looked older already.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm kind of wondering, like, okay, what happened? Or what did she see? Did she come back, or how did she, you know what I mean? Like, I think there's a lot of richness in that whole star map, World Between Worlds.
Well, they almost
piece.
have to. I mean, they have to, right? Because this is where we're last seeing her. So this is almost, in a way, kind of like a Luke Skywalker kind of thing, right? The last time you see Luke, he's in Return of the Jedi. He's looking off at the, you know, Jedi that came before him, you know, Yoda, Anakin, and Obi-Wan, and, you know, warm feelings. Everybody's celebrating. Well, okay, then the next time we see his character,
He's grumpy.
he's grumpy in The Force Awakens, and he's completely disillusioned and everything else. So you basically have these two reference points.
Hmm.
And it's like, okay, what happened in between there? And it's the same thing with Ahsoka. You basically see where she left off in Rebels. And now, even though we haven't gotten anything beyond one episode, and I'm not entirely sure if we're going to. I know a lot of people are thinking that Ahsoka might pop up again in the next episode, and certainly that's possible because if Gideon's got his dark saber thing going, and I mean it's gotta happen because if you remember, Giancarlo Esposito was all like, "Oh yeah, you're gonna see all these duels, and all this stuff's gonna happen," and I'm like, "Well, when, dude? Because we've seen like 2 or something, and we're almost at the last episode. So it's not quite what you had promised, So I'm thinking maybe the next episode, the season finale, is when we're going to get this whole epic thing. And I have no doubt it's going to be like 50 minutes long or something like that, like the previous season finale was. But again, even though we only have Ahsoka in 1 episode so far, maybe 2, we'll see what happens next week. There's still, again, 2 reference points. They got to let us know, well, okay, what went on in between when we last see her in Rebels and when we pick her up again in The Mandalorian? Because, like you said, there's a pretty rich story in there somewhere, probably several of them.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
But I do think, though, that this is going to be, I think from all of them, this is going to be the flagship series. I mean, The Mandalorian really is the flagship series. I mean, let's be honest, but I just have a feeling that of these new series that are coming out, Ahsoka's going to be that foundational one. And I also think that it's The Mandalorian especially, but even Ahsoka, and this goes a little bit to Ronaldo's point, is I think that you're going to find that this is going to be sort of like characters are going to come in and out, either from other series or maybe it'll be used to launch other series or other story arcs in other series. I think that you're going to see a lot happening in this thing. And I agree that I think Filoni is going to be very deeply involved in this. But now here's a question. And this is what I want to deal with in the Ahsoka section here too. Do you think now that Filoni is going to be less involved now in The Mandalorian? Because don't forget, The Bad Batch is kind of his thing too. Even though I think he's just producing that. I don't think he's actually running that show.
Well, yeah, I think he's probably like, once again, like the story aspect of it.
Yeah, kind of just like executive producing or something.
Yeah, I think he's probably have his hands on the story. And honestly, I think once again, that was one of the first shows that was actually, announced ahead of time. So I think that's already done, quite frankly.
Oh yeah. That's true. That is true.
I mean,
like those animated shows, it's like by the time they premiere. But then again, they could be, I mean, who knows? When did they say The Bad Batch is going to premiere?
January.
Oh, this January?
Mm-hmm.
Like in weeks?
Yep.
Oh, well then, yeah, it's done.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So,
but Ahsoka, though.
But Ahsoka, like I said, we don't know when that's going to, and they haven't released the actual dates for these, but they said this is going to be the Ahsoka is going to be a limited series. So it may be like the Obi-Wan thing. We don't know.
Well, and the other thing too, and this is something that I'm really hoping that they do, because one of the things that's horrible is, okay, next week we're going to get the season finale of The Mandalorian, and now we got to wait till probably next October before it picks up again. And I have a feeling that wait's going to be a lot more painful than season 1 to season 2 was.
Definitely. And I think that's one of the things that, or one of the reasons why I think they're going to give us all this different content now to at least kind of keep us kind of pacified until we can get
exactly.
To
and that's
main,
my point. Like, hey, okay, so say Mandalorian comes on in October. Okay, well, if you give us like a series in February, and maybe it runs from February to like March or something, or whatever. How many ever weeks the series is, and then maybe you give us another one in like May or something, and another one in August. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, and each one's only running maybe like 8 episodes, 10 episodes max. So, you're talking like 2 or 3 months per series. What would be cool about that is then they start seeding them out, and pretty soon now you're it's kind of like, okay, the Mandalorian is like, oh, I got to see what happens next, but it's like, oh wait, look, Ahsoka, and now you get all wrapped up in that.
Yeah.
So it makes it a lot less painless or painful. And then basically what you're doing from there is then you're actually, you're going in and you're keeping people engaged. And I think that that's what they want to do. They want to boost subscription to Disney Plus, and you do that by if you're kicking out all these series, and that's not even dealing with the Marvel side of things,
Right.
because they gave like a bunch of announcements there. They had, I think, they had like the live action Pinocchio or something that they were talking about. I think they even like a Willow series or something like that.
Willow series. They talked about Black Panther being released in 2022.
Yeah.
And they're not changing Chadwick Boseman. Well, they're not replacing him, I should say. So, yeah, there's been a lot of developments coming out of the Disney house, the House of Mouse, as they say.
Well, yeah, and I mean, I think that a lot of this is going to be designed to really get those subscriptions going, because if you think about it, it's kind of like something that you and I have said a million times, is that the future of Star Wars seems to be more geared to TV than movies. I mean, what do they do? Make like 2 movie announcements or something? And
well, especially like I said, I mean, hopefully this pandemic, wraps up very quickly, but we just don't know how soon we're going to get back to our regular lives where we're going back into the theaters and whatnot.
Well, that's true. I mean, they just made HBO Max.
Yeah.
Warner Brothers basically said that all our movies in 2021 now are going on HBO Max. So that's pretty huge.
Yeah.
All the pundits and YouTubers and all that talk about movies in general. Yeah, they're going crazy talking about that. And then, AMC's like trying to crawl on them. And then the Directors Guild and all this stuff is, because of things that AMC is doing. I mean, it's a mess.
Yeah, it's a whole mess.
It's a whole convoluted mess.
Yeah, and I think that's why, we haven't gotten any information about, Taika Waititi's film just yet, just because it may be that big where it's like, okay, maybe Rogue Squadron could, live on the HBO Max, shall we say, or Netflix, or maybe it'll be on Disney Plus. But let's just say they dropped it on Disney Plus. It's like, okay, well,
I don't think so. I think they're going to keep the theatrical releases theatrical. I mean, where Disney is actually in good shape is the fact that, especially now, they have just this crazy amount of series that they can release. So even if they had to put off a movie, it's sort of like, well, okay, we could do one of 2 things. Either we'll just keep it rolling with the 30 series that we're producing or whatever, or they could just come up with another one.
Yeah.
They could just be like, well, hey, what was that? Remember that script that guy sent in last week? Well, let's
bring that back.
Yeah, let's just do like kind of a limited run series on that or something. And I mean, I'm oversimplifying it, obviously. I mean, I know you can't just, pick a script out of a pile and go, yeah, let's just make a movie out of that tomorrow or whatever. But they could. And another thing they could do is, how about feature-length animated films? This is something I've really wanted to see from Disney. And
well, yeah, I mean, like, they started with the Clone Wars movie, although people really didn't, some people didn't care too much for it.
But that's not really,
but I mean, what I'm saying,
I know, but
that's where it debuted. It debuted in the actual theaters.
Sure.
So you can make like a series, kind of like they've been doing with all the Batman stuff, like all the Justice League stuff.
Oh yeah, and that's pretty much the example I give, especially the Batman stuff.
Oh, man, I've been eating that stuff up, man.
Oh
That's
yeah,
sweet.
I mean it's just like there's just so much cool stuff, and you could do a lot of cool things with animation. You can tell a lot of these stories, particularly if you want to involve a Mark Hamill or a Harrison Ford or any of those guys, but you don't want to pay all the money to de-age them, because that's been a thing too. Well, do you bring Luke Skywalker in The Mandalorian? Because it would fit. I mean, it definitely fits. And even with the Ahsoka series, if that's taking place at the same time as The Mandalorian, certainly Luke Skywalker would fit into that too. But the problem is, okay, he's given his blessing to Sebastian Stan to, pick up the mantle, but it gets a little bit weird, because you leave him in Return of the Jedi and it's Mark Hamill, and then you're picking up into something that's supposedly after that
with somebody else.
Yeah.
But then after that, you get the actual Mark Hamill back.
Right.
and
And
Force Awakens. And
yeah. And exactly. And it's like, on one hand, I get it, because everybody's like, wow, just de-age Mark Hamill. It's like, you do know that costs a lot of money, though, right? I mean, it's like, people are throwing that around like, oh, yeah, well, just de-age, like 3 different actors or whatever, not realizing that, hey, this is kind of a costly and time-consuming thing.
Right.
We're just throwing around these terms, and that's because we've seen it so successfully. More so on the Marvel side of it, like what they did with Michael Douglas and Ant-Man and Wasp. I was like, dude, this is pretty crazy, man.
Yeah. I just think that with even, like to your point with the whole animation thing, it's funny because like I was talking to my grandfather today and we were talking about Star Wars and, he was, just really happy about like the Clone Wars because he's like, I kind of didn't like, this cartoon, and I really don't do that. But then, like, I'm in my room and I'm hearing like the theme music to the Clone Wars blaring, through his soundbar, and I'm like, oh, okay.
Great. It's like the new generation of porn. People are probably like sneaking down, like cartoons or whatever, but then they're sneaking in there,
going to the kid's stash.
Exactly. It's kind of like the old days, with like you're getting that barely like that picture's all like wavy and stuff, and you're trying to like make something out.
Yeah, but see, now he's all into it though. He's really like taking, the new. He's like, man, this is cool, and now he's starting to see. Oh, this is what Ahsoka was like. He's like, man, she's just like, Anakin. And
dude, I tell people all the time.
Yeah.
It's like, you have to watch if you're any kind of a Star Wars fan that cares about anything canon at all, it's like it's mandatory viewing at this point.
Yeah.
Because there's just so much crap that comes out of there that you have to, people are like, well, who's this person? It's like, look, dude, if you just watch the Clone Wars, I get it. It's 7 seasons. I know it's an investment, but you need to do it. And I would even extend that to Rebels too. I would say, you know what? Those 2 shows, they're the nucleus of modern canon. And don't forget that George Lucas is the one that basically did the Clone Wars.
Yeah. The thing is, he really loves it to the point where, now he's like, man, I love Cad Bane. And, it's just like these all new.
Man, I hope they put him into live action.
I know. And I was thinking the same thing. And I was telling him about like all this stuff that's been released. And he was just like, oh, really? I'm like, yeah, man. It's like all these shows are getting ready to come out. So you don't have to just wait on The Mandalorian. Now you got all these other shows that's, kind of spinning off and coming out. So you're really going to have your Star Wars fix. So he's
even
super
though,
happy about that.
And that's the thing. It's like, and this is the only thing that bothers me. Like, the one thing that was cool about when Lucas wrapped it up in 2005 was you're like, okay, well, I'm done. I saw all the content. I have come to the conclusion that I can never die now because I keep thinking to myself, it really, it gets to the point where I almost need therapy for this. It gets to the point where it just tweaks me out to know that there could be a Star Wars thing that comes out after I pass away that I won't see. Mm-hmm. And it just, I don't know, it bothers me. But at the same time, I have to say, what an exciting time. Let's see what Ronaldo says. Well, Filoni has his hands full right now. I guess he chatted this in a little while ago. He's involved in 3 series, but I think he will find a balance. I see what you did there. Do you think that Kevin Feige got involved in a way, considering the model that they are following with Favreau and Filoni? Well, that's a good question.
That's a good question.
That's almost a clear your mind question.
Yeah, and that's a great observation, especially. And it's funny because you and I were just talking, right before we went on the air, about how this whole panel of like movies and stuff, it looks like the whole Marvel thing that they did, when they were releasing all the. Yeah,
it's starting to feel like what they're trying to do. So
they're taking some Marvel approaches.
They are.
Yeah,
and that's okay because in television you can do that because the television universe of Star Wars is new. Mm-hmm. If you think about it, everybody gets really fixated on the films because the films have to look and feel a certain way. Mm-hmm. Once you bring Star Wars into television, which of course has never been done before, other than the holiday special in 78, but I won't even count that because that wasn't even done by Lucas or anything like that. But once you bring it into television, now you can do things. You can violate. Don't get me wrong. It still has to feel like Star Wars. Mm-hmm. And I think that this is where The Mandalorian succeeds. They do a couple of things that number one, had always wanted them to do, but two, so they give us a genre, like a Western, right? They give us the feel of a Western. They give us a little bit of an adventure that's outside of the saga. And they're basically introducing new characters while giving us familiar ones. And they're basically trying to make it like their TV shows. And this is what I liked about stuff like, we talked about Cobra Kai. We talked about, some of this other stuff where a lot of TV shows now are moving away from the complete episodic style to where each thing, like recently, I'll admit it, I watched the Saved by the Bell reboot.
Did you?
Yes.
I was wondering about that.
It's cheesy but I mean, it's cool. The only thing is they try to kind of modernize Saved by the Bell by making it feel somewhat like the original series, but at the same time put this whole like social justice warrior thing into it. And it clashes a little bit, but if you could get through the first couple of episodes, it's cool. I mean, it's Saved by the Bell, so I mean, we're not talking about Emmy award-winning television here, but it is entertaining and it's fun to watch. But the point I'm going to make, though, is that pretty much each episode, even though there is a little bit of a continuing like series-like thread, each episode basically stands on its own. Whereas something like The Mandalorian, you have each episode standing on its own.
But it's a part of a bigger story.
But it is, yes. You basically have like this whole overall story arc. And what I think is important is that now, much like Cobra Kai, which is a little bit more like the same thing, you can essentially now go, okay, like 10 episodes, if each one's like a half hour or something, you're telling like a 5-hour movie now. Rather than releasing a 2-hour and 20-minute movie in the theaters. You can get a little bit more in depth.
True. I completely agree.
So, I mean, I don't know. That's AHSOKA.
Right.
I mean, is there anything else you guys want to talk about with AHSOKA? I mean, what do you think of this whole AHSOKA series? We knew it was coming, but definitely let us know. You still have time to chat. I mean, look, we're pretty much going to be here all night with all these series that are coming out. But, hey, let us know in the comment section, too. If you're watching the rebroadcast, let us know what you guys are thinking. Are you excited for the AHSOKA series? Where do you think the AHSOKA series is going to go? Because that's an important thing, too. We don't really know. I mean, we kind of have a feel for the character, but we don't know what's going to happen. Let us know. All right, so next, speaking of, we kind of dealt with the sequel to Rebels. Now, this is more the sequel to the Clone Wars, Bad Batch. So the Bad Batch... And this is one that I have to admit, at first I wasn't really all that excited about. Because I did enjoy the Bad Batch in that last season of Clone Wars a lot more than I thought I would. But at the same time, when I found out that, okay, just setting the stage here, you're getting this announcement from Dave Filoni. Yeah, we're going to do another animated series. And now your mind is wandering. Ooh, I wonder what it could be. I wonder where it could be set. I wonder what's going to happen. And then what do we get? We're going to do a series on the Bad Batch. And I'm like, really? It's not that I think it would be bad. No pun intended. It's just that I don't know if we need this. This is feeling like Solo to me.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I mean, now, don't get me wrong. From the sizzle reel that we did see that they have, I can see how it could get I can see how it could get interesting, because the Bad Batch are kind of like mercenaries at this point, and they were always kind of loyal to the at the Republic at one point, but now they're kind of loyal to the Empire, or at least they have some alliances with the Empire, especially when you see like Tarkin kind of giving them orders, and he was. So I'm like, okay,
Yeah,
I want to see how like Tarkin is going to handle these guys, because of course they're like this rogue group of clones, but they're highly effective. So I can see why Tarkin's like, well, I'm only going to use the best people I need for certain jobs. But then you got to wonder, well, what are those jobs? And then of course, this is during a time where Vader's around. So are we going to get, more Vader in this? Not a whole lot, I mean, but I can see
I know what
him,
you mean.
Him sprinkle in there a
Sure.
little bit. But I mean, as far as the Bad Batch, do I really need to see a whole thing with them? Not really.
Okay, but picture this.
Sicily,
Okay.
1920.
Yeah, right. I mean, I agree. I agree, because you do have a point, and it is something that admittedly I didn't think about, is the fact that there is something interesting there. And this is something that I've been saying actually ever since, probably Attack of the Clones. And that is the Republic, which was the legitimate government,
Right.
which are the ones that are the good guys, becomes the Empire.
Right.
And a lot of times people forget that. It's like, people are like, well, how can they fight for this evil empire? To most people, this is just kind of the Republic.
Yeah,
but
it's just the evolution of it.
imperialized,
Yep.
And so you actually have this thing in the Bad Batch, because here's these clones that are fighting for the Republic, and they kind of still are, but they go from being perceived as good guys to bad guys. And there is a lot of storytelling there. So now there's been a little bit of a chat explosion here. Yorgi says, do you think that Disney is going to make Baby Yoda clones for these new shows? I think I know what he's saying. And Yorgi, definitely correct me if I'm misinterpreting the question here, but I think basically what he's saying is there going to be the new Baby Yoda for each one of these things? Is it going to be like some sort of either cute character or some, kind of breakout type character that's going to be featured in some of these shows?
I honestly kind of look at the Bad Batch almost as a precursor to Rogue One.
Yeah, I could see that.
I could see them it kind of being like that war film. Like, okay, the Empire is trying to take over. They got to get certain places in line. They got to get certain, systems together. There's certain regimes who might rebel against the Empire who's like, hey, we don't subscribe to this. You guys used to take care of us. Now, all of a sudden, you're dictating to us. We don't want to be a part of it. And it's like, well, we need your resources. So either going to give them to us or we're going to take them. And then they dispatch the Bad Batch. And, so I can see in like, Dave Cossey tweeted, not tweeted, but chatted in. The Bad Batch series would be like, the Star Wars version of the A-Team. Exactly.
And that's a good point. And that is a good point, because it could actually be something like that.
That's what I imagine. That. And, we've often talked about how, you talk about genres or different genres within the Star Wars universe. And so we've already got Western with The Mandalorian. So I could even see them taking like popular shows that were like, big in the 80s or 90s, like the A-Team or something like that.
Sure.
And just do a Star Wars version of that.
Why not?
Why not?
I mean, it's certainly possible. And again, I mean, I think, we'll talk about it a little later, but I think that Visions thing, I think they said there's going to be like some horror mystery elements to that one, or kind of like a thriller type of thing. So definitely, and this is something I had been hoping for a long time, it looks like Lucasfilm and Disney are finally catching up to some of the fan base who have said, hey, why not do genre films? Why not do things in this genre or that genre, but they just happen to take place in the Star Wars universe.
Now, one thing I will say, what would really be cool, I just kind of thought about it. So the Bad Batch takes place like after the Clone Wars.
Mm-hmm.
What if they use the Bad Batch to hunt down the remaining Jedi?
Oh, yeah, as part of Order 66?
Yeah.
Well, that was actually in, that wasn't the Bad Batch.
Because I mean, you had the Inquisitors, you had all those different.
Right, but I mean, there was a time though where like some of them like Rex or some discovered the chip and deactivated
Right.
it, and it makes you wonder then if he went to any other clones. Hey, there's this chip that you all need to get out of there or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But hey, if if Tarkin's dealing with them, Vader's around, why not? And again, that would be because again, you kind of fell in love with the Bad Batch.
Yeah.
Because they were the good guys. Now they're not the good guys. But if you look at it from their point of view or their perspective, they're fighting for the same organization, basically. The Republic has become the Empire. It's still the legitimate government. And that's what I think a lot of people miss.
Absolutely. Ronaldo says, first of all, that trailer was spectacular. Yeah, yes, it was. He also says, I find it very interesting to see post Order 66 events from the clones' point of view. Also, I've always wanted a Republic Commando series, and Bad Batch will be the closest thing.
Absolutely.
By the way, was that Fennec Shand in the trailer?
You know, I didn't catch that. I don't know. But it wouldn't, well, I don't know. It's because being that she's basically like a Mandalorian character, I'm not sure how far back that whole thing goes. So we'll have to see, you know. I mean, it's one of those things like everybody's going through things with a microscope and, you know, the fine-tooth comb and all that stuff, trying to find Easter eggs and everything like that. And
right.
My advice on that one is, you know, because it's always good to support YouTubers. You know, somebody has by now has taken the trailer and just like, here's 37 Easter eggs you missed from, you know. Right. I would say go through that because I'm sure if it was, I'm sure somebody has discovered that. And then, of course, he goes on to say, I really want to see that Rambo clone again.
Right.
Yeah, I know.
Totally what it was like.
I know. That's completely where my mind went to. So that was really cool. But you're right. I mean, again, it could very well be that the Bad Batch, it's like Solo. Solo was a movie that I wasn't necessarily against, but I didn't think it was a good follow-up for The Last Jedi. Now, again, I don't mean like a sequel, but I mean the movie that comes out after. But at the same time, it probably needed to be something like that because it was a good, fun, it feels like Star Wars again.
Mm-hmm.
And we definitely needed an uplifting, kind of upbeat, fun adventure movie.
Sure.
You know, with that, and that was even almost a genre film. If you think about it, that kind of had an Ocean's 11 sort of
like
vibe to it. Yeah, the heist thing. And I think they could do more stuff like that, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's what I would like to see anyway. But what about you guys? I mean, you know, we don't want to leave you guys out. What do you think of this whole Bad Batch thing? Is this something that you wanted? Were you a fan of the Bad Batch from the Clone Wars? And you're like, hey, I'd like to see more on these guys. Or did you lean a little bit more on the side of, hey, I really wish that they could have come up with something else? Definitely let us know in the comments below. Okay. Now we have the ANDOR series, which is nice. We actually have a name for this thing. This is the Cassian Andor series that we've been promised. Again, this is one of the ones that we've known about for quite some time. And in fact, if I remember correctly, basically, this thing was announced right around the time The Mandalorian was announced.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I love the logo for it, how they use the O as the, you know,
the
rebellion emblem.
Yeah.
So I love that. Yeah, so this is pretty much, you know, announced roughly around the time The Mandalorian was announced. It's also a tense, nail-biting spy thriller created by Tony Gilroy, set to arrive on Disney Plus in 2022. Diego Luna is reprising his role as rebel spy Cassian Andor from Rogue One. He'll be joined by a fantastic crew of new castmates that includes Stellan Skarsgård, Adrian Arjona, Fiona Shaw, Denise Gough, and Kyle Soller, and Genevieve O'Reilly as Mon Mothma. Production kicked off 3 weeks ago in London.
All right.
So, you know, we ran into, of course, you know, Cassian Andor in Rogue One. And we kind of went right out the gate, you know, with his character, we kind of saw that, the rebels kind of had to get their hands dirty.
Yeah,
it's not
that
as
was actually
clean.
one of the things that I really enjoyed about that because, up until then, we have seen them more so through the novels. You're starting to see this a little bit more in some of the other stuff we're getting, but the thing that was cool about the new canon novels was it was starting to humanize the Empire a little bit, which goes back to what we were talking about when we were talking about the Bad Batch thing, is the fact that you have a legitimate government. It's basically went from the Republic to the Empire. To most people, the rebels were terrorists, and the Empire were the good guys.
Right.
They didn't know about Palpatine being a Sith. They didn't know. I mean, they knew Vader was a little creepy looking, but they didn't really know the full story behind it.
Right.
And so you have a situation where these guys think they're doing the right thing. And because they think that they're doing the right thing, it puts a different spin on some things. And you start to actually follow the characters that they're laying out. And you're following them. They've done the same thing to Thrawn, actually. In a way, Thrawn's not quite as dark and evil as he was in the original expanded universe. I mean, he's maintained most of his characteristics, don't get me wrong. But you can relate, like you cheer for this guy, where that wasn't the case before. You just saw he was a really cool villain. So one of the things that I liked is that with Rogue One, like you pointed out, now you get to see the rebellion. They're getting their hands dirty. It's not quite as, knight in shining armor.
Yeah, lily white type thing.
Yeah, exactly. To where, they're just like the ultimate good guys. This isn't Superman. This is more Batman.
Right, exactly.
So I think that that's definitely the case. And, Boatwright Family of Comics says, I definitely like to see more of the Bad Batch. And I think it ties in with that. I think it's a really interesting thing when you start to really humanize all these different characters and you start to see things from their perspective and understand where they're coming from. It's not so much the men in white hats, men in black hats.
Right.
Just this black and white, good and evil kind of thing.
Well, yeah, and you're seeing everybody's stake in the universe. That's the cool thing about all these different shows is that everybody's kind of has their own perspective of what the galaxy should be or what the galaxy is, and they kind of have their own visions of what life should be like.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's one of those things that, I mean, look at even here on Earth, right? Everybody, every country has their own little ways of governing, and even within a country, everybody kind of has different views on how things should be run. So now imagine multiplying that galaxy-wide. You're going to have all kinds of stuff like that.
Definitely.
Dave Kasi, one of our co-hosts. Hey, Dave, if you could join us Monday for the Mandalorian Episode 7 review, feel free to hop on, man. He says, Andor equals spy series equals a Saint or James Bond. Sounds great to me. Yeah, that's a good point. I never really thought about it, but it is basically like a kind of like a spy movie type of thing.
I could see like a Jason Bourne or
yeah, exactly.
Type thing.
Yeah, more of a Jason Bourne kind of thing. It's funny because over the last, I don't know, like week, I started going back and watching a lot of the old James Bond movies. I haven't seen them in a long time. Like I went through You Only Live Twice, and
I watched that one not too long. Like
really?
Yeah, like maybe about 4 weeks ago.
Well, that was always, like, of the Connery films, that was always my favorite one. So I've been trying to go back and, like, watch, like, I think I'm in the middle of Diamonds Are Forever now.
Oh, yes.
But it's interesting to me because you start to see, like, yes, this is the precursor to a lot of the more modern spy thrillers and or political type things. Your Jack Ryans, your Jason Bournes.
Jack Reacher.
On television, Jack Bauer.
Yep.
You start to get that sort of super spy kind of thing. And they could easily do something like that with the Cassian Andor series. And that's what I'm hoping they do. So with that said, and this question, I'm not just asking him, I'm asking you guys too. Because remember, this is a big discussion. But what do you think do you think there's going to be an overall story? Do you think it's going to be kind of like The Mandalorian, or do you think that it's really going to stick within more of a spy thing, or do you think it's going to be, and you sort of pointed it out, more like Rogue One and be more of a war movie than a spy movie or series?
I could see it like Kasi said, I can see where you can get the James Bond elements from it because you have, for those of you who are Bond fans like myself and Eric, so, of course, James Bond is usually fighting for Britain, his home country. Well, Cassian, saying he used to be a separatist.
Yes, and that's something that I really hope that they give us some more backstory.
And I think that's where we're going to start. I think we're going to start with him being in the separatist movement and then migrating, hopefully, over to the rebellion. But I think we have to kind of see like what caused that. And I think in his findings, something is going to happen. He's probably going to find out about Dooku or find out something that happened along the way that's caused him to go like, oh, wait a minute, I don't agree with this. Maybe these guys are right. And I think we've seen that in Star Wars happen before with AHSOKA dealing with that young separatist.
Yeah, I was actually just thinking about that. Or was that the same episode where, was the one where Padme had to go to the separatist and make that deal or something like that? And
she took AHSOKA with her.
Yeah, and they were actually like finding out like some of the separatists, because a lot of the separatist people didn't understand that they didn't know they were bad guys either.
Yeah.
Most of the separatists just had a legitimate disagreement, as far as the way that they thought things should be governed.
Well, and that's really what's cool about it, because even like here in the United States, right? You got people who are just loyal to certain parties, like, oh, I'm a staunch Democrat, I'm a staunch Republican. And then there's people who are kind of like, well, I'm kind of like the Bendu, if you will. Like, I'm kind of just trying to find the balance of it all. Mm-hmm. And even those of us who live here in the United States, I mean, unless you really just are that trusting, but, we've seen things in our own government where we're just kind of like, I wonder what, that doesn't seem right.
Yeah, it's a little, that kind of seems a little shady.
Exactly.
Somebody should look into this.
Exactly. So, I mean, you can see how people are looking at it. It's like, okay, we get into arguments or, debates. Hey, should we bail this country out? Or, no, we have issues here at home. Why aren't we worrying about this? So just think of, like you said, galaxy-wide, okay, like there's other factions or other groups who are probably having the same issues. And that's what's cool about Star Wars. That's what makes it relatable in a lot of ways, is because, even in the galaxy far, far away, the same issues still exist.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things that's really interesting, because I was thinking about this the whole time that we were talking about the Cassian Andor character, because so he used to be a separatist. Mm-hmm. The separatists were basically against the Republic.
Right.
Ergo, the bad guys.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Then he kind of realizes that, hey, this isn't all bad or whatever. He ends up joining the rebellion, but now he's kind of against the Republic again because the Republic became the Empire.
Right.
So now he's against the Empire. So he's constantly against this bigger body of government, as it were. And yet it's kind of weird because a lot of the people that are in the rebellion are trying to restore the Republic the way it was before the Empire. Mm-hmm. So your brain could really hurt if you start to think about this stuff, beyond everything, because it really is. This is why I say that Star Wars is a lot deeper than what people realize. I mean,
and you could tell like all these different, like deeper philosophical stories that could really, if you really stop and think about, like, man, like what are these people up against? And you really put yourself in those shoes, you're like, man, like I don't know if I'll be able to do that.
Well, you know what? One of the things that really hit it for me was when I was reading Lost Stars. You read it, right?
Lost Stars? Mm-mm.
Oh, man, yeah, you got to read that one. But you were following a lot of these characters in the Empire, because remember, it was kind of like this boy and girl fall in love. This kind of took place toward the end of the Clone Wars or whatever. and they signed up for basically, you know, the Republic that became the Empire. So they signed up for the Empire because they were loyal, you know, and everything. And then the guy eventually realized that the Empire weren't, you know, the propaganda wasn't necessarily true. He ends up joining the rebellion. But what was interesting, and then of course the stories is amazing, but what was interesting was, you know, you're following a lot of these Imperial students through the academy. You know, they're getting their assignments, and then they're on the first Death Star. And a lot of these characters that you got super invested in blew up in the Death Star. And then it's kind of like the people that had survived were, you know, now they hated the rebellion even more. They lost their friend. I mean, you really related to this type of a thing. Like, you never really thought about it. I mean, you know, when you're seeing A New Hope, you're over there cheering, like the Death Star blows up. Like, yeah, you know, but now you're kind of like, just mad because, you know, they killed some really cool person that you really liked and related to. And that's one of the things I love about what Disney is doing with Star Wars now.
Well, even and without getting, you know, too far into it, you see a lot of that in this latest episode of Mandalorian.
That's true.
You know, you kind of see the humanization part of it, of the, you know, of the remnants of the Empire. You see, okay, like these are, and how they respond to certain things. Like, well, you know, and even you can see how how the Mandalorian had to kind of like do some things without revealing. But yeah, it's
tune in Monday at 8:00. We'll go through the episode. But yeah,
you know, and that's the thing is like people, you know, like anytime we go to war, you know, it's usually a single person that we don't agree with. So it's kind of like, okay, if we're talking about like, let's say, you know, North Korea or something like that, it's like, okay, well, we don't like this person who's running North Korea. It's not that we don't like the North Koreans. It's just but of course they're siding with that person either because that's what they truly believe or because they just have to. So you see what I'm saying? But like the everyday people, you know, the mothers, the little kids that's playing, you know, stickball in the field somewhere, like, we don't have a gripe with them, but they unfortunately become those casualties. And then there are some people who are, like I said, in those regimes who may not even truly understand what they're truly fighting for.
Yeah.
You know, because
it's kind of like you said, they're forced to do it.
Yeah, you know, one of those things like one of our favorite movies, Few Good Men. You know, when they ask like, okay, well, you know, do you ever think, hey, the old man's crazy? You know, no, not a chance. Why? People follow orders or people die. Like that's how you're training your program to think. So you're constantly thinking like, okay, well, whatever my commanding officer says, I got to do it because that's what I'm programmed to do. And does your commanding officer have the full story? Maybe, maybe not.
Oh man, they got to have a Colonel Jessup in in Andor, you know.
Oh, that would be awesome.
You ever serve in an infantry unit?
You can't handle the truth.
Oh, man, that would be awesome. Ronaldo says, I really like the character of Cassian. I really hope we see the darker side of the rebellion. I don't think there's any danger of us not seeing that, honestly. We already kind of saw that in Rogue One, and I think that that's part of the point of the series, which is basically what we've been discussing, is that, yeah, I think that they've been doing this with the Empire for a little bit. Now I think that they're going to dirty up the rebellion a little bit.
Yeah, so you really don't have a side to really, like, which side do you really truly agree with now at this point?
Well, what it is that you see them in different light, and you understand what they're fighting for, but you start to go, well, because, I mean, look, don't get me wrong, the Empire is still inherently evil the way that it's doing
business.
It's business because of what the Emperor is trying to do and everything else. And look, they're out there enslaving worlds and, you know, taking their resources and doing all this stuff. Mm-hmm. But what becomes interesting is not everybody is a part of the plan.
Right.
And they're being told, like, the information is being kept from them. So these are the kinds of things that's where that dichotomy comes in, is not everybody in this organization is really, and, you know, yes, they're supporting the Emperor, and it's like, oh, yeah, I'm loyal to him, I would die for him, but they don't know he's a Sith Lord. They think that he's this guy that was victimized by the Jedi, that, you know, that's the way that is. Ronaldo goes on to say, I think it is primarily a spy thriller, but I think we will see elements of a war series.
Yeah, I can definitely see that.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's right. I think it is more of a split the difference kind of a thing. And it also depends. Remind me again when this takes place. It's not that long before Rogue One, is it?
No.
Was it 3 or 4 years?
Yeah, somewhere I think it's like 5 years or something before.
Well, what's interesting to me is how some of these series, and we're going through them one by one, guys. So if we haven't hit your favorite yet, hang with us. We're getting there. We're getting slowly but surely. We're getting there. But like Obi-Wan, for instance, takes place 10 years after Revenge of the Sith, which is probably about 10 years before A New Hope. So it's roughly maybe 6 years I know Rogue One butts right up against A New Hope, but it kind of starts out like 2 weeks out or something.
Mm-hmm.
So, you figure, okay, Cassian Andor's taking place like kind of maybe in between the two or close. So it's interesting to me how a lot of these series are going to start to overlap.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, I just think that, with with Cassian, I think his whole world is kind of like, it kind of reminds me of like Dave said, like one of the Bond movies, one of the ones with Pierce Brosnan, because if you think about it, like a lot of times, in the Bond films, that's why they send him, because Spectre is kind of like that outside force that's kind of controlling, or they're kind of throwing a monkey wrench into things to kind of get other countries to fight each other.
Yeah, that was totally what You Only Live Twice is about.
Yeah, so they're constantly kind of doing things. So, all right, well, we're kind of shooting, the ball over here, and we're like, well, the only person that was over there was them, so it could have been them. And we know this group over here is going to be upset.
I mean, that was like kind of the, living through that time, it was kind of hilarious, is because, somebody would blow up something in the United States, and the government's calling up the Soviet Union like, all right, did you guys do this?
Yep. So I think that's kind of what the Cassian Andor thing is. Like, you kind of get the spy element because you're trying to find the truth and uncover the truth of what's really going on. But then in the midst of that, because if you don't, a war is going to break out, or another war is, like a smaller war is kind of brewing.
Speaking of this, I'm just gonna throw this out there. So, guys, I am watching a lot of the James Bond movies. Mm-hmm. So, which one should I watch next? Put it in the chat section. Like, which one should I watch now? What should be my next Bond movie in the series? I'm curious on what everybody's gonna say.
And it's funny because when we keep bringing up Bond, but
I know this is almost like the James Bond head-to-head podcast, right?
But it's funny because Ronaldo keeps saying he wants to see like the darker side of the rebellion, but that's kind of how Connery was. Connery was kind of the darker Bond as opposed to like Roger Moore. Mm-hmm. Roger Moore was kind of more the lily white, kind of just easygoing kind of guy, whereas Connery, some things he would do, even like the way he would kill people, would be kind of like brutal.
Yeah, and of course Daniel Craig sort of
picked
was
that up,
harkened back to that, which is a little bit closer to the Ian Fleming version,
right?
Moore basically played a little bit more lighthearted, and then Pierce Brosnan kind of split the difference a little bit. He was kind of like had one foot in Moore and 1 foot in Connery.
Yeah, he would kind of make those little one-liners and stuff.
Yeah. So I mean, that was that was pretty funny. But I mean, as far as the Cassian Andor series goes, guys, also while you're busy recommending my next Bond film, let us know in the chat right now. But if you're watching the rebroadcast, certainly, let us know what you guys are thinking of Cassian Andor. Are you excited for this Andor series? Are you basically like, I mean, Rogue One was cool, but I don't necessarily need to see a prequel version of this? And if you fall into that category, what would you guys like to see instead of Andor? Let me know, or let us know, I should say, in the comments section if you're watching a rebroadcast. And again, if you guys are really liking the show or whatever, hit that like button. Show some support. It really helps out the channel. Subscribe to the channel. We have a donation link, so it kind of helps us pay for all this stuff. So I mean, any support is appreciated, but
So
no matter what, we love to come to you guys every Friday, so we're gonna keep doing that. So the next one, now we have the Lando series.
Lando.
And this is one of those ones that I have to admit totally surprised me.
Yeah, this one really caught me off guard.
Yeah, this one came out of nowhere. Because the thing is, and if I remember correctly, they didn't even really announce who was going to be playing them. Like, they didn't go, is it going to be Donald, which I mean, it would almost have to be Donald Glover at this point. Because, I mean, what are you going to do with Billy D. Williams?
I mean, granted, true,
guy's like 80-something, and,
he's not really walking the best.
He's not walking the best, and it's not, the most you can do is, it was similar to what they were going to try to do for Rise of Skywalker. Again, this is a rumor. This wasn't anything that was actually going to happen, but somebody was all like, what if Lando was, I remember back when, and they almost did like a flashback thing. So you could actually have Billy D. Williams kind of like in that current time period, reflecting on his past adventures, and then it comes up that way.
Have a Family Guy moment, basically.
Well, I mean, this is actually a legitimate technique. I mean, I've seen this done in a bunch of series where you have like the guy, he's older and he's kind of telling the story. They've done a lot of gangster movies like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just we haven't seen that in Star Wars yet. So some people might feel like that's not really Star Wars, but
Well, I mean, on TV, though, that ship is kind of sailed, though, don't you think?
Well, yeah. I mean, like, you could do that. I mean, now, the cool thing about, Lando, my thing is I'm wondering, like, what time period they're kind of covering.
Well, yeah.
Because you could do, let's just say, is this before he meets Han or is this after he meets Han?
Oh,
like, what is he like? What is he doing? Like, is this before he meets? You know what I mean? Like before the Solo movie happens, or is this after? Like, okay, Han's gone off to kind of work with Jabba on Tatooine, and now Lando's going back. Is this where we see him acquire Cloud City or start to get into that section of his life?
I don't know if that would actually be the most compelling. I mean, I could see where it would be. That's one of the reasons why I think I was so surprised
exactly.
by this announcement.
That's my point.
I'm like, why are they? I mean, again, I thought that the way that Donald Glover played the part, that hands down.
Oh yeah, and we knew that before they even cast him. We said, like, if they were to cast someone to play Lando, it should be Donald Glover.
Oh yeah, that's true. That was another like a Rosario Dawson moment where we called that, and again, once you actually saw it on the screen, you're like,
of course,
man, I want to see more of the continuing adventures of Lando. So they could do that.
Right.
Here's a question.
Okay.
This is all for all you guys. Do you think with this Lando series, especially if Donald Glover's in it, do you think they're going to bring Alden Ehrenreich in as Han Solo? Because remember, they were signed on for like a trilogy or something.
Well, yeah. I mean, I definitely would think so. The only problem with that is, so if we go back to Empire, Han makes a statement and said, well, I'm sure he's forgotten about that. And he was talking about, we don't, I mean, we're thinking about the Sabbat. We're thinking about the Sabbat game that they played and how he lost the Falcon. But is that really what that was?
I don't think
so. Now you could make a story that's like, okay, he and Lando are kind of doing some stuff here and there, or he pops up in the Lando series and, they go on adventures or something like that. And then maybe there's something else that happens. And then he's just like, all right, I don't ever want to see you again, that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Or, this has to take place before he meets Han.
They could actually do it before he meets Han because obviously he had a pretty storied life. Mm-hmm. Kira knew who he was.
Mm-hmm.
It's like she was basically saying, okay, he's like this, he's like that. He obviously had a reputation. So he's been doing some stuff before, Han came into the picture. But that said, I think you have to look at it from, and I hesitate to say this only because I know how it sounds. My initial reaction is, but would anybody care?
Well, here's the other piece that you could do. You could have him set in the Rebels era. Because
You
remember,
could.
he did pop up in Rebels, and he
Yeah.
helped them out
Yeah.
during that period of time. So he was always, he's already kind of, established. By
Well,
that
that's
point.
what I think. If I had to do it, I would think the most interesting time to set Lando would be between, which, I mean, I guess Solo falls into this, but between episodes 3 and 4, somewhere in there. Because that's where the meat of the story is going to hit. Because you have to sort of bump it up against when we see him in The Empire Strikes Back. Because you bring up somewhat of a good point, too, is the fact that you got, again, 2 frame of references, just like what we were talking about before with AHSOKA, with Luke. You have the Lando that we meet in Solo, and then you have the Lando that we meet in The Empire Strikes Back.
Right.
These are 2 key points in Lando's life. So what happened in between that?
Exactly.
And I think that you had to cover that. And another thing that you brought up that I hadn't really thought about, but it's true, and it's something that I think about every time I see The Empire Strikes Back. It was brilliant the way that Harrison Ford and Billy D. Williams played it, because you could feel there was some
tension.
history there. Like,
yeah, the tension. Yep.
the whole time, we're being introduced to this new character, but we're sitting there like, what happened between you guys, man? Because
I mean, you knew it was like, okay, just to recant, they're in the Falcon, they're on their way to Cloud City, and Han brings up like, oh, Lando. It's like, well, the Lando system, he's not a system, it's a man, car player, smuggler, scoundrel, you'll like him, and Chewie is growling and grunting, and Han makes the reference like, well, I'm sure he's forgotten about that. So it's just kind of like, well, what the heck was that?
right,
And then, of course, once they land, of course, they're having trouble landing. So then once he does land, he leans over to Chewie. He's like, hey, man, this might go south, so just stay sharp. So
keep your eyes open, huh?
yeah, so it's like you kind of have this whole tension once again building. And then the way Lando walks up to him, and he's just like, you slimy, no good. He's just like going off. You got a lot of guts after what you pulled. And then you're like, okay, once again, is that the Sabacc game that we see at the end of Solo? Or is it something else? But then it's like, well, what have you done with my ship? So it's kind of like, okay, is this about the ship or is this about something else? I also think that I've always often noticed that, Lando kept hitting on Leia the whole time. And it's like, she's clearly with Han, like, dude. So it's just like, is Lando trying to get him back for something? Like, is he really like, all right, I'll take his girl from him,
Well, I do wonder this. I wonder what his relationship to Kira was, because Kira knew Lando fairly well. But, and obviously Han knew her. So it makes me wonder, like, how did Lando and Kira meet? I mean, obviously, she's running around for Crimson Dawn and all this stuff, but there's stuff there. And it's like, this is why I think it would make the most sense to set it maybe just either before or after Solo. I'll even tighten up the timeline a little bit. I'm going to say before or after Solo, because I really think that what you could do is, in a way, and we said this when we were speculating, is there going to be a Solo 2 and all this other stuff? You could actually sequelize Solo in a TV series. You could do that, and you can bring back these characters that we really wanted to see. Because, I mean, I don't know about, well, I do know about you because we talked about this, but I don't know about all of you. But I'm like, as soon as I was seeing the end of Solo, that's when I got really excited about the movie, to be honest, because you find out that Kira's working for, Crimson Dawn. You find out Darth Maul is in charge of Crimson Dawn. You have this really kind of cool but uncomfortable dynamic between Lando and Han. I wanted to see Solo 2 way more than I wanted to see Solo.
Right.
I was invested in this, and I just think that they are missing an opportunity if they don't do that. Now, Ronaldo says, I think it will definitely be Donald Glover, and I think we'll see other Solo characters considering the acceptance that the movie has been getting lately. And he's right. I mean, look, there's been Make Solo 2 happen hashtags. There's been a lot of love for Solo, and let's not forget that it was basically considered a box office bomb, but it still did like 500 million or something. I mean, sure, compared to other Star Wars films, it didn't do as well, but at the same time, nobody really hated it. They were just basically like, well, I mean, it was cool, it was fun.
Right, and we
just didn't need it. That's all.
Not only that, but you didn't advertise it properly, and that was the biggest thing. I don't think a lot of people even.
Well, I'm talking about when people saw it, but you're right. Yeah, that's probably why it actually was a box office failure, to be honest.
Right.
But I mean, the Lando series was what actually really intrigued me. I think that was one of them. I'm probably going to change my mind throughout this whole thing. Like, nope, this is the one that was. But so far, the Lando series was the one, to me, that came the most out of left field. Because we'd been hearing some rumors and grumblings about the other ones. I just didn't know if they were really in production or not, whether they were spec scripts, whether, I mean, they could have been in a lot of stages of development or something. But the Lando series, like, who even knew that was coming out? Watch, somebody will probably link in the comments, like, it'll be Jason, too. He'll write, like, an entire novel's worth of a comment talking about, well, here's where, it was.
And then you're like, oh, all right.
Yeah, be like, okay, I'll just like that comment and move on. But, yeah, I mean, I don't remember anything. I remember they were toying with the idea that this is where they could go, but I don't recall anything saying, like, yeah, we're developing a Lando series or something.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it just caught me out of left field. I'm excited to see where this goes, though.
Oh, yeah.
Because I really want to know, like, what time period, and then.
Well, when's it coming out? Did they say?
Nope.
Oh, this is one of the ones. Yeah, it figures. Some of the ones I noticed in this whole announcement, they would give some definitive. Well, some of them they would almost have
years. Like,
yeah, they would at least have. If they didn't have dates, they had years. Like, okay, expect this in 2022 or expect this whenever. But this one is just like, yeah, we're coming out with Lando. Now, here's a question then. If they're announcing it now, do you think it's that far off? Like, what's the latest you think we're going to start seeing some of this stuff come out?
The latest?
Yeah, the latest.
I'll probably say like 2024.
You really think that? It almost sounds like I'm about to. But no, I mean, do you really think that they would do that, though? Because why would they announce? Well,
I mean, I think you announce some things just because. So, like we said earlier, this is, I think what they're giving us right now is time. I think they're biding themselves some time for the films as they kind of fine-tune those and figure out where they want to go. Where they really want to go. Yet we can tell these stories right here. This is kind of like the comic book realm, if like a visual comic book, if you will. So we're giving you like these short little series that you can kind of follow that tells some great stories with characters that you're already familiar with and some you're not. And then that way this will kind of, keep you engaged, keep your, your appetite wet for Star Wars while we're still working on the big entrees.
While we're trying to repair the entire film series.
Exactly.
Or we're trying to fix the mess we created. Here's some series that are actually good that will make you love Star Wars again. And then we promise we'll work on fixing everything.
Exactly. And honestly, that's what I think they're doing. And it's smart. I mean, I think, especially when you have people like Filoni and Favreau who this is like a gold mine for them.
Oh, yeah.
So it's just like, okay, cool. I get to play in this sandbox all day long. And they pretty much own it. I mean, there's like everything is pretty much centered around them, and they're kind of finding the directors, they're finding the people, and they're kind of just, helping, curate the scripts and things like that. But I think that's where we're going with this. And then, like I said, we'll start figuring out some of the bigger things, like the films will kind of be sandwiched in between these series. And then also, I think, with like they say, ANDOR just started filming 3 weeks ago, and they had a cool scissor reel on that where like Diego Luna's actually kind of taking you through the set, and they're putting that same type of care like they did Mandalorian. But see, now I think they can do with this whole video game engine stuff that they've been doing, over there. I think they can spit out a lot of things a lot faster. Man, sure, you still got to build some set pieces and things like that, but they're still bringing that realistic Star Wars. And I think they finally decided, like, okay, we're not going to do everything green screen. We definitely have to give people that Star Wars feeling, because that's what makes Star Wars, first of all. And I think when you started creating these shows, okay, we have The Mandalorian. Season 1, major success. Season 2, we're pretty much on the same path. Is even taking it up a notch. So now we have to see, like, okay, what's the next thing that's going to come out of this? And if we get, okay, The Bad Batch, that's already done. That's coming out in January. We got books that's coming out at the end of January. So once again, that'll tide us over for a little bit.
Well, and the other thing that you got to look at too is that I'm sure COVID played a role in all this stuff.
Oh, totally.
So I mean, I think that maybe we're getting all this stuff piled up because it's not as spread out. They've been working on it. I mean, some of the timelines are affected. Maybe some of this stuff would have come out even sooner. So your 2024 timeline could be correct. Now, Ronaldo says, the only way I see Billy D popping up is if he tells his story when he was young through flashbacks to Donald Glover. Yeah, I mean, that's where I think that would be the best. I mean, there are other scenarios where he could literally be the star of the show, but I do think it would be stretching it.
Mm-hmm.
Don't think it would be a good idea. Oh, and he says, by the way, Casino Royale, License to Kill, and Goldfinger are my top 3 Bond movies.
Which Casino Royale, though?
Yeah, so I'm going to guess
the Daniel
it's
Craig.
Not the Peter Sellers one. I mean, Watcher's like, no, it is the Peter. But, okay. That's good. Those are your top 3. But which one should I watch next?
I'm going to say Thunderball.
You're going to say Thunderball. Well, wait. Like Thunderball or Never Say Never Again?
Thunderball.
Man, you know what? I forgot about Thunderball.
That's why you should watch it.
Yeah, I guess that's a good point. Yeah, no, maybe I will. Well, let's see what Ronaldo says. Okay, well, here's what else he says. According to what I investigated in 5 seconds, good man, Rogue Squadron will be released December 25th, 2023, and Andor in 2022. And then Obi-Wan Kenobi will begin filming in March of 2021.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that probably puts Kenobi around a 2022, maybe early 2023. So it's going to be interesting. Wow, like the end, like Christmas of. Well, no, that makes sense because that's the movie.
Yeah,
that's the actual movie.
Yeah, that's a movie.
So that makes sense. Which is weird. It's coming out on Christmas. You would think that if they were following their old timeline, it'd be December 18th. But then again, they probably don't want to follow their old anything. It's like, you know what? I'm surprised they didn't put out in May, actually. Just like, people love Star Wars when it was released in May.
Yep.
But then they were making like $2 billion when they did it in December. So, there is that. But I don't know. I mean, this is really kind of a tough call because on one hand, what I think would have been smarter, and again, I don't want to be one of those Star Wars fans that no matter what they do, you always find something to complain about. But I'm going to complain about one little thing. I wish that they had a little bit more stuff in the can that they were ready to release, like in 2021.
Right.
If they were going to make this huge announcement. Again, I get it. Yes, you're giving us basically, because if they did say that, then we would turn around and say, well, yeah, that takes care of 2021, but what are they going to be doing beyond that? So now they're giving us a little bit of a picture to right through 2023.
And I think also you brought up the point of COVID, because even
Yeah,
watching the
that's true.
whole Cassian Andor thing, just watching everybody move around with masks on, that's, the thing is you kind of have to account for that because let's just say, prayerfully not, but let's just say like, all right, two of the members of the, the setup, the set crew, comes down with this stupid thing. And now they got to shut down production because, you got a quarantine. Hey, did you come in contact? things have to get shut. You have all these parameters now.
That's when you just make that Stormtrooper series.
So
It's like, look, Stormtroopers and bounty hunters coming in 2021. It's like everybody's wearing masks, basically. It'd be great.
right. Or, that's when you just go animate it, but
Yeah, there you go. Well, they're right.
not me. I get you, but see, I think that's why they space things out. And the reason why they haven't given us like concrete dates is because you have this whole pandemic that's going around, and you can't necessarily guarantee like you were able to do a year or so ago.
Yeah,
where you
that's
can
true.
say,
They
like,
don't know.
Yeah. So you kind of just have to kind of play it by ear. I mean, I'm just thankful they're still even shooting, honestly, right now.
Well, and again, I mean, you would have to be really, really just totally negative if you're going to take this and start complaining about stuff. I mean, they're giving us way more than anybody expected on this thing. But it does make you wonder, though, because the biggest issue about doing something like this is that they risk setting people up for disappointment. That's the only thing that...
Right.
Even though, again, it looks like they're making all the right moves. So from that standpoint, you know, I'm cool with it.
My thing is just follow through with all this. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, well, that's
the big thing.
Exactly. That's another thing they have to do. They have to follow through. But, what about you guys? What are you thinking when it comes to Lando? Were you surprised by this series? Did you somehow expect it? Because, there's a lot of people that have guessed that this thing was coming out. Or at least at some point. I've heard rumblings about a Lando series in the past. I just haven't heard anything lately. But definitely let us know what you guys are thinking about this in the comment section below. You can still, of course, chat with us live. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the notification bell. It's kind of like Daryl said earlier. Hit everything except the dislike button. That's what we want because that helps our channel. All right. So now we're going to get to the big one. So this series, as I actually have a picture of Hayden Christensen as Anakin up here, simply because I think that this was the biggest news that came out of the Obi-Wan series announcement. And basically that Hayden Christensen is going to come back, return, and play Darth Vader. So the Obi-Wan series is another one. I mean, I would say even before the AHSOKA series, this was the one that everybody expected to come after The Mandalorian. Because this was announced around that time. You had basically the big three. You had The Mandalorian, you had Andor, you had Obi-Wan. So we've known about this stuff for a long time. And we've speculated, and there's been rumors upon rumors about the Hayden Christensen thing. And that's where I kind of want to put the focus because what were some of the details that we got about Obi-Wan? Let's start there. Go ahead and and give us some of those, and then let's go into some of this Hayden Christensen stuff.
All right, so last August at D23 Expo, Lucasfilm announced the return of Ewan McGregor in the iconic role of Jedi Master Obi-Wan Kenobi for a special event series on Disney+. Officially titled Obi-Wan Kenobi, the series begins 10 years after the dramatic events of the Star Wars Revenge of the Sith, where he faced his greatest defeat, the downfall and the corruption of his best friend and Jedi apprentice Anakin Skywalker turned evil Sith Lord Darth Vader. The series is directed by Deborah Chow, who helmed the memorable episodes from Mandalorian Season 1. This will truly be a day long remembered, as it's confirmed as Hayden Christensen will return as Darth Vader. This will be the rematch of the century, Kennedy said. That'll be Kathleen Kennedy. It was such an incredible journey playing Anakin Skywalker, said Christensen. Of course, Anakin and Obi-Wan aren't on the greatest of terms when we last saw them. So it will be interesting to see what the amazing director like Deborah Chow has in store for all of us. I'm excited to work with Ewan again. It feels so good to be back.
Yeah, so I think that a lot of this stuff, and again, there wasn't a whole lot of surprise. I mean, the Obi-Wan series has probably been talked to death.
Right.
At least as far as this is what the storyline is. Some of the only things, and this is where I'm putting the focus today, some of the things that have been answered for us is, one, the timeline. Because we knew, obviously, it's going to be in between 3 and 4. But what we didn't know was where in between 3 and 4. Is it going to be like 2 years after 3? Is it going to be like 3 years before 4? So it looks like it's an interesting choice that it's essentially because there's like 20 years or something between 3 and 4. And it looks like this is right down the middle.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really interesting to me that they're choosing this part. And the fact that they're having Hayden coming back as Vader and not a flashback of Anakin Skywalker, I think is really interesting. Although, don't get me wrong, I'm sure there's probably going to be flashbacks in this. I don't doubt it. I mean, I don't have any confirmation on that, obviously, but I don't doubt it. But here's the thing. How do you feel about it? And what do you think? Because I have a few thoughts, but there's also some precedents, because the big thing, and you can address this in your comments, is, how are they going to do this? Because there are some people that they basically fall into one of two camps. It's either Vader and Obi-Wan met again from, they hadn't seen each other since the Mustafar duel. They meet again in A New Hope. Mm-hmm. And there's other people that say, no, there's dialogue in A New Hope that supports, this is the camp I fall under, that supports them actually meeting at some point before then.
Right.
And I was actually talking to one of my friends today about it. And I even told him about the conversation you and I had on the show like a week ago or something, where, you're kind of like, no, but wait, there's this, that, and the other. And I'm like, well, it's true, but I don't know. I'm still kind of going for this is possible, and obviously it's happening. So,
well, yeah, I mean, this is definitely, it's a definite possibility that, okay, of course, I can't even say it's a possibility at this point, because Kathleen Kennedy so much has confirmed that there's going to be a rematch. She says this will be a rematch of the century. So,
she's using that famous Filoni J.J. Abrams misdirection, yes.
Well, I mean, because you have to look at it from the standpoint of like, okay, like you said, the last time we saw them was at the end of Revenge of the Sith, when, of course, Anakin is like burning beyond recognition. And then, the next time we see them is A New Hope on the Death Star. Now, of course, we know the line, that Vader, utters like, when I left you, I was a better learner, but now I'm the master. And then he said, well, only master of evil, Darth. Well, I've always said that doesn't necessarily mean that they fought again, because, yeah, when he did leave, like, he was still a Jedi Knight. He hadn't received the rank of master yet. So he still was a Jedi. He was still a learner, technically. Mm-hmm. When he comes back and he says, but now I'm the master. Yes, only a master of evil, though. So, yes, you're a Sith Lord. You're what's basically a Jedi master, just on the dark side. So, by that, yes, you can say there was no rematch. But, of course, now with Kathleen Kennedy, apparently there is. Which is fine.
Yeah.
But my thing is, see, my biggest question is going to be this. Apparently there's going to be some rematch. One, okay, let's say Alec Guinness is playing maybe Obi-Wan at maybe 65 years old.
Well, I mean, here's the thing then. We were going over this whole timeline too, is that if you go 10 years after Episode 3, then Obi-Wan is about 45. That's how old he should be.
Okay, so
in this. But the problem is that doesn't totally, I mean, it gets real close, because Alec Guinness, I think, was like 62 or 3 or something like that.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. Like, okay, if Alec Guinness is like roughly...
But he would have been like 55, technically.
55.
That's how old he should be.
Okay. I thought he was moving around like he was 80. But anyway, that's besides the point.
And again, it was a limited, and a lot of that, we all know that, you know, at the time, Lucas was like, no, lightsabers are heavy, like broadswords.
Well, I'm not even talking about that. I'm just talking about the way he moved, like he was moving like a grandpa. He looked like a grandpa anyway.
Tatooine, man. It wears you out.
Yeah, I was like,
it's
maybe
like the desert sand. It like ages a man.
I was like, I guess so. The heat is making him crazy. But my whole thing is, okay, so we're going to say that, Anakin not Anakin, Vader and Obi-Wan meet up again. How do you explain that to the Emperor?
Oh, you don't.
But I mean, like, okay, like,
You have to tell him everything, man.
but I'm just saying,
It doesn't
like,
have to be like, you know.
but I'm just saying, like, okay, so you mean to tell me that Obi-Wan meets up and he confronts Vader yet again, and then now they're like having a duel.
I wonder though if it's gonna actually
Emperor's
be a
not going to
duel,
feel
though.
that in the Force.
Well, yeah, but you know, then again, if you remember, the Emperor, he wasn't dealing with the Emperor in the first time either. In A New Hope, we never see the Emperor.
No, we never do. But I mean, like I said, you know,
You're just assuming that he went and told him about it.
no, I'm just saying, like, okay, so, in A New Hope, you know, he's like, he is here, Obi-Wan Kenobi, yes, and the Force is with him. Okay, but you know, I thought you were the last of that whole religion.
You can just see Target's like, wait a minute.
Yeah, so it's like,
Now
okay,
you told me.
like, you know, so my thing is like, and of course Tarkin definitely knows who Obi-Wan is. So my whole thing is
Yeah,
like,
he looked kind of freaked out when he said that, like Obi-Wan Kenobi.
and exactly, so like, okay, let's put it this way: if Vader didn't tell him, you know, Tarkin had to.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying that it can. You don't necessarily. This is a problem that I have sometimes with Star Wars fans.
What's your problem, man?
Oh, and we didn't think we were having Duel of the Fates today.
It's a real duel.
So
ladies and
yeah,
gentlemen.
Duel of the Fates. You know, should Vader be an Obi-Wan or should he not be an Obi-Wan? That's our. But I mean, a lot of it is that, and again, this is where you start to lose the fantasy aspect of it. It's like, I mean, I understand what you're saying because. And this is something that we've talked about a lot, is that the more they play in the sandbox of this already established timeline, you start to risk screwing up the whole canon a little bit here because you're going to paint yourself into a corner. I fully agree with that. But the thing is that, yes, Tarkin may have told him. Yes, Vader may have told him. We don't know. Doesn't matter. We don't even know that he really told him the first time. We never really see it.
Right.
I mean, obviously there was like a little deleted scene or there was an original scripted version of Return of the Jedi where Obi-Wan's Force Ghost was actually supposed to face the Emperor again. The Emperor, I'm sure, is quite aware of it, but you have to remember, and you really get the sense, if you read Lords of the Sith, and especially if you read a lot of the comics that have been coming out, particularly the Darth Vader series, you get a feel for the way that the Emperor handles Vader.
Mm-hmm.
There's certain things that like he knows is going on, but it's kind of like he's trying to let Vader pretty much handle it, learn to be a Sith Lord, you know, that kind of thing, or do things that will be used against him. So it's not necessarily like he'd be, you know, like the Emperor may very well sense it. But let me get to some of these chats because this is getting kind of
crazy.
Yeah, kind of crazy. So Ronaldo chatted a bunch of stuff. He was like, Thunderball is cool. It's the way to go. So,
We're all the way back there.
yeah. So, you know, just as a rewind for anybody that may be popping in, I was saying that I'm going back through the James Bond movies, and I was kind of like, well, which one should we do? And Ronaldo, you put out 3, of course, very good ones. I mean, and then, of course, Daryl mentioned Thunderball. Ronaldo agrees. So I think Thunderball will officially be the one that I'm going to do. Then he goes on to say, very happy Hayden is back, but I highly doubt that they will bring him back to be Vader and not as Anakin. So I imagine there will be a Clone Wars flashbacks with Hayden. Well, the problem is they kind of already confirmed he's coming back as Vader, though, in this announcement. And that's why we're having this discussion, and we're, you know, that's why there's some problems. He also says, scares me a little is what Kathleen Kennedy said about rematch. Personally, I don't want Kenobi and Vader to fight before A New Hope. And that's basically a little bit, before I get to the rest of these, that's a little bit where I was going with this, is the fact that I don't necessarily think that rematch has to mean lightsaber duel. It certainly implies that, don't get me wrong.
Well, yeah.
You know, but I mean, I'm just saying that there is a little bit of wiggle room there. Like, you can get away with not having it. They could face each other somehow. I can't imagine them facing each other and not igniting their blades.
Well, I could see that because I could see it because of some conversations that that happens later on in the films. So, when Vader was talking to Luke, Obi-Wan once thought as you do. You don't know the power of the dark side. I must obey my master. And I think that was probably, what we're probably going to see is Obi-Wan's last attempt to try and bring him back. Now, there's this, what also alludes to that there was another confrontation.
Yeah, when he says you should not have come back.
Well, no, not that part, because once again,
I'm adding that though.
Well, yeah.
I mean, I know they were talking about at that moment, but they were just, I don't know. There was certain things that were said during that kind of, they could have had a double meaning. And again, do I really think that Lucas's original intent? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, when he says, he's more machine now than man, twisted and evil. So that whole line right there is just like, okay. Like, granted, one, he's probably shocked that Anakin even survived that whole thing because he saw him like, okay.
Well, and that was the point. That was actually what I was telling my friend, and what you alluded to is the fact that was one of the things that I was using as proof that they did face each other. But you're like, well, wait a minute, though. He knew his name was Darth Vader. Okay, you turn on the HoloNet, you see a dude named Darth Vader. It's like, oh, well, I guess he's in a suit and he survived, and, wow. Guess he's more machine now than man.
Right, because, I lopped off his legs. He's already missing an arm, and then I lopped off that one. And so,
Kind of like, man, but I had the high ground.
Right, exactly. I should have been higher.
Right, I should have had the higher ground.
So, yeah. So I think that's probably what we're going to see. We're probably going to see, like, Obi-Wan's last, because at this point, Obi-Wan's at a state of peace. But of course, he's probably not going to he's not letting on to Vader that, I have your kid either. Because if he.
Yeah, well, when I get to these chats, that's where I really want to go with this conversation, is that the problems that this brings up. Because it brings up several.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I mean, do I want to see Darth Vader in anything? Of course I do.
Definitely.
Do I want to see him interact with Obi-Wan Kenobi? And I have to trust that because Deborah Chow is the showrunner and she so far proven amazing and really good, then I think I can probably hang with it maybe, but that remains to be seen. Okay, Ronaldo says, now, if they do it in a way that Obi-Wan fights with a vision of Vader or something like that, yes, bless the visions in Star Wars, because that's the way that they can get away with all kinds of stuff. As long as it's not the real Vader, I think it can work. Yes, look at us Star Wars apologist fans going crazy. We will help you, Lucasfilm. We will figure out a way to make this work so, everybody's happy. It goes on to say, I think Obi-Wan can use his saber skills without using Force so the Emperor doesn't feel him. That's possible, but the other thing that you got to look at, too, is that I'm not entirely sure. This is where they've been a little bit convoluted about that, and this is true even in the comics, where what the Emperor feels and what he doesn't feel, because I think what you have to do to work this out in your head, and we're going to get into a little nerdy and geeky stuff here, so fair warning, but there was a point where the dark side was being blocked by Yoda during the time of the original trilogy, very similarly to the fact that Palpatine was blocking the light side back during the prequel trilogy. Now, the question becomes, when did this transition take place? When was Yoda able to start successfully doing it? Did he land on Dagobah? This little hatch thing opens on that adorable little spaceship he was in, or that pod. He kind of looks around, maybe sets up his little cave and, grabs a bite to eat and gets right to work. Like, yep, blocking the dark side starting now. Or did it take a little while? So remember, this Obi-Wan series takes place in the midpoint. So when did that happen? And it is conceivable that Yoda could have been working on this, blocking the dark side, because remember, the Emperor didn't sense everything. I mean, he was even, going to Vader, like in Return of the Jedi. Well, like, are you sure? When he was...
I felt him. He's like, strange, I have not.
Yeah, right. Like, I don't know, man.
Well, see, and the only reason why I said Obi-Wan was because Obi-Wan was powerful. He wasn't just like, I mean, he was a very powerful Jedi.
Sure. I mean,
and so, like,
the problem is he was dispatched within 5 minutes in virtually every duel that he fought with the really heavyweight Sith guys. But yes, we should clarify that Obi-Wan is a very powerful Jedi.
Now, one of the things that I've always speculated against once I realized that Yoda did block he was using the Force and Dagobah to kind of amplify the Force so he can block Palpatine.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if that wore him out before, and that's why he eventually died.
We know that species needs to take a little bit of a nap.
Well, yeah, now we do.
Like they're powerful Force users, but man, it wears them out like something fierce.
But they don't have a whole lot of bodies, so that's why.
Yeah, now when you stop and think about it, because the Force flows through you and all that stuff, it's kind of like if you're the size of like pretty much a coffee mug, I guess. You don't really have a whole lot. It's kind of like people who like barely weigh anything and they try to drink a lot and we wonder, well, why after 2 beers am I like flying? It's like because you have like nothing there, man.
Your stomach the size of a peanut.
Exactly. Which means your liver is probably like maybe
a Skittle.
Okay, so now we get to something good here. Kim Rasmussen says, the only thing I want to hear from them is we are selling the IP, which is intellectual property, by the way. They clearly have no respect for it, and they don't know what to do with it anyway.
Wow. All right, Kim.
Okay, well.
The dark side flows through.
You know what? But this is...
But I understand her, though.
Exactly.
I completely understand her.
And again, I can't stress this enough, is that Disney has to, and I think that they're successfully doing this, starting with The Mandalorian, and it seems like they're doing some cool stuff with everything else. I think they're fixing it. They're going to fix it in television, and then what they're going to do is they're going to go in and they're going to try to fix the movie situation because they did drop the ball on the sequels. Even people that like the sequels, I don't think that you can really deny that. I don't think that you can deny that there was a lack of planning. They didn't handle it right. They did pretty much everything wrong. The fact that these movies were even halfway decent is miraculous.
Right. I think people just went to go see them just because they wanted to see the conclusion, and you got to see how it ends at this point.
Well, and then you get people that are all like, oh, well, like Favreau or Filoni or whatever is going to redo episodes 7, 8, and 9, or George Lucas is going to come back and, do all this stuff. And it's like, I think that's wishful thinking. But the fact that that's what people want, I mean, think about it. Star Wars goes from, this is like the best movie ever made, and pretty much people feel that way through the whole thing. Empire Strikes Back, it's like the best sequel ever done.
Yep.
So the original trilogy enjoys this really exalted status. Prequels, okay, they kind of had that was the first chink in the armor, but the sequels,
that obliterated.
I mean, people are like, could we remake them? I mean, even as much hate as the prequels got, which, by the way, people are starting to actually come back to. People are kind of like, hey, the sequels are actually, or the prequels rather, people are actually having warm feelings about. They're saying like, hey, they were kind of cool. And there's even love for Jar Jar, which that I don't understand. But, I mean, I'll be honest.
Yeah.
But I think that, like Kim is saying, there is a certain part, a big part, I should say, of the fan base that they got to win back.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think they've lost the trust in a lot of the fans. I think the only reason why a lot of people didn't, I think a lot of reasons people didn't hate the prequels as much as the sequels is because, one, you kind of know where the story had to end.
Yeah.
1. 2, you got great characters in Darth Maul. Like, he saved the prequels. 3,
And Dooku.
it's George Lucas. Like, I mean, the guy, it's the same guy who created it. The problem is
Yeah.
when you got away from him, it's no different than how we say about iPhones. Like, you know, when Steve Jobs was living, oh yeah, iPhones were great because, you know, he's kind of the mastermind behind it. Once he died and everything else kind of started going away from his original intent, now you started seeing the chinks in the armor a little bit more. It's still a great, you know, device, but, or in the case of Star Wars, yeah, some things that were cool about it. Like, we got some cool characters. We got a Kylo Ren. We got, you know, some force powers that we've never seen before. We've gotten some cool things out of it, but then there's more harm, unfortunately, than good. And that could, unfortunately, all those cool things couldn't save the sequels.
Yeah, and I think that that's important to note, too, is the fact that you definitely had a situation with the prequels where the characters were cool, the story was good, and more importantly, it was planned out.
Right.
And I think that that's really where the sequels suffered the most.
Definitely.
In fact, I think that everything that you can say was wrong with the sequels, you can go back to poor planning or no planning. Ronaldo says, in the comics, he cut off from the Force so they could use that. Yeah, that's true. In the Obi-Wan, it was either the Obi-Wan or Star Wars, one of the comics where they actually showed that Obi-Wan cut himself off, kind of like pulled a Luke in a way.
Right.
So that's true. Ronaldo goes on to say, I think there is something very special when you see them in episode 3 and then in 4 after a long time. And I think if they fight before episode 4, it would lower the impact a bit.
I agree.
Oh, unquestionably.
I agree.
On the other hand, or I'll pull a Frasier, although
Go on.
it could also heighten it, depending on how they handle it.
Yeah, I mean, you really have to, like, if they had some, now, to me, I just think that if you have Vader and Obi-Wan show up before episode 4 and they have some sort of confrontation or they see each other, I think that dialogue has to be gripping.
Well, absolutely.
Like, that dialogue has to be like almost Oscar winning, you know what I'm saying? Just because because when you look at the friendship, the relationship of these two men, you know, from literally basically Obi-Wan raised Anakin from a kid to a man.
No, you're right.
And then, you know, only for, you know, it's kind of like that moment when, like, if, you know, people have ever had that situation happen where your parent, like, kicked you out of the house or something like that. Like, that's essentially what happened. It's like, okay, and he's pleading with Anakin. Man, I even liked, you know,
I almost had that happen.
Yeah, me too. But you know, you see that part where, you know, Obi-Wan's just like pleading with Anakin. It's like, you know, my allegiance is to democracy. Like, it's not about this.
Yeah, see, I thought that dialogue was cool.
It was. And then, you know, if the fact that Anakin is like, you know, had his back turned towards him, it's like, well, if you're not with me, then you're against me. It's like, only the Sith deals in the absolutes. You know, I must do what I must. And it's like, well, you will try. You know, then that's just like, and it just goes off. So that tension right there, that needs to happen again. If there's not going to be any sabers going on, that dialogue has to make it, so it has to give that credence to 4 again, where it says, you should not have come back. Because I told you last time, I'm not going to let you out of here again.
I'm pretty sure. Now, I don't know who's executive producing this thing, but I'm pretty sure, especially Deborah Chow getting her fill of, like, Filoni probably telling her all this stuff, and I'm sure that he's kind of guiding some. It wouldn't surprise me if he actually executive produced or something. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But, I mean, I have to believe that they're thinking along those lines. I mean, I say it a lot about a lot of things, but it's like, if it can occur to me,
right?
Surely these professional people that are doing this,
been doing this for years.
Exactly. It's got to occur to them. But then again,
but a lot of times, and that's what I think, a lot of times people try to reinvent the wheel, or a lot of people try to put their stamp on Star Wars because it's like they want to say, like, well, that was my movie and that was my thing, and I brought that, you know, to Star Wars instead of just sticking
Yeah.
true to what, like, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Like, you just add to. Don't try to recreate or redefine Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think once you start doing that, now you're starting to go to the dark side, shall we say.
No. I totally agree, actually. I mean, I think that's the problem is, like you said, they got to handle this correctly. They can't mess this up. Because if they do, it's going to cheapen the whole scene.
Yeah.
Then Ronaldo goes on to say, I really like the sequels, but they are a mess. Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I like The Force Awakens a lot. You know, I like The Last Jedi. I like what they were trying to do, but there were so many problems with it. Rise of Skywalker was a really good, fun movie. But again, he really had an uphill battle on that. There was almost no way they could have ended that movie. Now, again, Duel of the Fates, the script that Colin Trevorrow had, I read that and I say, well, wow, okay, maybe it could have been cool. Who knows? Ronaldo also says, but I think that right now they recognize their mistakes and they actually know what they are doing with a good plan. He emphasizes plan. Oh, that beautiful word, he said. Yeah, well, exactly. And then, of course, Kim writes in, they have a whole galaxy to choose from. Hutt Empire. Yeah. And we've said that. Make a crime drama with the Hutts.
Yeah.
And the bounty hunters and all this other stuff. And this is where they can get into more genre films and stuff like that. I think that that's really what they need to do. They need to start moving in a direction that is not so incestuous with all these characters. I mean, that's what I like about The Mandalorian, actually, is the fact that they're bringing in some of the familiar characters that we know and love, but they're expanding that universe. They're world building. They're giving us a story that is not the Skywalker story or an extension of it. It's a completely different thing. And that's why I like the whole Baby Yoda / Grogu thing, because it's a Jedi story, but it's not, at least at this point, involving the Skywalkers.
Right.
Which I think is really cool. But that was one of the reasons why I brought this up. You saw that I started the segment with Anakin instead of Obi-Wan, or, the Obi-Wan logo, because that's basically, I've been starting all these. I've been putting the logo of the show, but I really felt like the conversation around that is really around how Darth Vader is going to be in this thing now that we pretty much know he is. Now, let me ask you this. Did they say anywhere that James Earl Jones is doing the voice?
No, and that's my next big thing.
Yeah, that was,
because
you have to.
It's going to, if you don't have James Earl Jones do it, here's my thing. I think you bring in Hayden Christensen because I believe there's going to be some sort of duel.
Well, actually, that actually brings up a good point anyway. I mean, you could put anybody in the suit.
Exactly.
Why are you putting in Hayden Christensen?
Exactly. That's my whole point. Why are you bringing him in? But we know that, okay, we know he knows how to use, the prop of a lightsaber, because he went through the whole training with Ewan McGregor before.
Yeah, that was 15 years ago. Well, I guess, it's like muscle memory, but...
Yeah, but he's done it before, and that was an extended fight, man. That went on for a while.
I know.
So my thing is it's like, all right, well, he had to learn all that choreography for that. So if you're gonna bring that type of duel back, shall we say, almost kind of like the one we always talked about, that one fan made, thing, how.
Oh yeah, see, if you're gonna do something like that, this is what I'm talking about. It's like when Lucas is tinkering with these things and making these endless special editions, why don't you put that in there?
I know, right?
You're giving us extra,
Jawas or Stormtrooper line or
dewback bones and all this other stuff. And hey, I'll applaud him though for putting that whole Han Java thing in there, because again, that's there's meat there.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you're gonna do it, you saw the fan did it. Made this just incredible. If you guys haven't seen it, just search I don't know, Obi-Wan Vader duel.
Redone.
Yeah, redone or something like that. I forgot. It's been a while since we've we've watched that. But yeah, I mean, it's spectacular. It's like this is a way the thing should have been done in the first place.
Yeah. But see, that's what I'm saying. I think that, when you have someone like Hayden Christensen coming back, it's like, okay, well, what do you really need him in the suit for? I mean, unless you're trying to show, like I said, him taking his helmet off at some point and you want to show that it's the same person. I mean, like I said, I could see it for that reference point.
I will say this, though. It would be good to actually have this because it'll be a little less weird to see his Force ghost at the end of Return of the Jedi if they do that.
Yeah. I mean, I think, like I said, if you show different parts, like, okay, he might be in his little chamber or something getting cleaned up or whatever, and you see his Hayden Christensen or, something to that effect, then I think it lends more like, okay, I see why you did that. But I think my thing is, just don't put those scenes in there, because you're bringing Hayden Christensen, a really trained actor, for what? Just to say that you have that scene? No, I think you're really bringing him in because he's going to be acting and doing something more in that suit, and we definitely know he's not doing the voice. So, yeah, I think there's going to be some sort of duel.
I know, but don't forget Disney, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they own Lucasfilm, they own Marvel. They're the same company that brought Vin Diesel in to say, I am Groot, and pay him millions of dollars.
That's true.
It's like,
that's true.
I mean, they could be doing that just because, hey, listen, if you get Hayden Christensen in it, everybody starts talking about it.
That's true.
Then again, though, I mean, it is Darth Vader. It's like, I mean, who was in the suit in Rogue One?
Mm-hmm.
Ronaldo says the video is called Star Wars SC-38 Reimagined. That's good. See, he's kind of like an honorary
Jason.
Well, yeah, there's Jason. Well, Jason, Ronaldo's good at researching all this stuff, like kind of on the fly. Jason does the same thing, though, actually. But yeah, I mean, these are the kinds of things that they just have to answer. They have to give us some definitive thing. We really need to find out more. This is the one of all the announcements. This is the one I think that people are like, wait a second now. Let's lay some ground rules out.
Where are you
going with this? Because
Exactly.
Now you're starting to tamper with, the actual canon. So again, what do you guys think, though? You know what we think. What do you guys think of Hayden Christensen coming back as Darth Vader? Do you think that this is a good idea? Do you think it spoils the current canon? Do you think it's something necessary to enrich it? We would love to know your thoughts. Leave in the comment section below. You still have time to chat in. Hey, while you're leaving a comment, don't forget to check out some of our other videos. You'll see some stuff in the comment section, as well as leave a like, subscribe to our channel, hit that notification bell.
Bing.
Yeah, find out when we're coming out with all kinds of other stuff, because we're doing review shows now. We're starting to do those on Mondays at 8 o'clock. We have a regular show on Fridays at 8. So, we'd love to have you guys join us for that. All right, so now we get to Star Wars Visions. Visions. This is the one that I thought was really kind of interesting. So go ahead and let's in case everybody's not on the same page.
Can't believe you skipped I don't want to say my favorite, but.
Well, I mean, we're getting there. Maybe, I don't know. Because after this one, there's only like one more other one. But again, there was a lot of stuff.
All right, Star Wars Visions, presenting all new creative takes on the galaxy far, far away. Star Wars Visions will be a series of animated short films celebrating Star Wars through the lens of the world's best anime creators. The anthology collection will bring 10 fantastic visions from several of the leading Japanese anime studios, offering a fresh and diverse cultural perspective to Star Wars.
So with Star Wars Visions, I thought that it was kind of interesting because it seems like what they're going to do is one of the things that I always loved that they did in the novels. Like they had Tales from Mos Eisley Cantina. They had Tales of the Bounty Hunters. They had these like Tales of, I think they had like Tales of the Empire, something like that. But this is the old expanded universe, by the way. They would have these different Tales books where essentially it was an anthology. It was a collection of short stories that would expand or tell like little brief, things. Or then, of course, in the new canon, they had From a Certain Point of View, which was pretty much like some common things or some big things that happened in Star Wars, but from the point of view of somebody else or things like that. Then they had Legends of Luke Skywalker, I think, which they were saying not all that's canon. It was almost like if Luke were real, like all these, almost urban legend kind of things, Oh, I heard that Luke actually did, it was that kind of thing.
Gotcha.
It's like our Chuck Norris. But I mean, the thing that was interesting about this to me, though, is the fact that they're now bringing this into the realms of a series or a movie or something. Because, up until now, this kind of thing has only been done in books, maybe comics. Now we're starting to actually see, I guess the only precursor to that would be, what was that?
Yeah, those Clone War.
Those not even those, but I mean although you're right, that would be like the whole anime style. And same thing with Star Wars Resistance, honestly. That was kind of done in more of an 2D animated thing or anime thing. But I'm thinking that it was the Force, what was it called? Ronaldo, you got to help us out on this one. It was all those shorts they put on YouTube where it would have like all these different situations thing. Man, is it Force something?
I'm talking about
oh man.
Talking about when they had like Padme and
yeah.
I know what you're talking about.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was called something. I don't know. But anyway, Kim basically chatted in a couple of new things here. I would gladly watch anything from Vader's story after Revenge of the Sith. Yeah, well, that's the thing. And this is where I'm hoping that this Visions thing starts to go. Because one of the things that I would love to see, and, you and I both talk about this all the time, the story of Vader after Revenge of the Sith is actually a book called Lords of the Sith that's in the new canon. Now, they did write an old expanded universe book that was called Rise of Darth Vader, which essentially talked about Vader getting used to the suit, his new hatred for the Emperor because he knew he was duped. It was pretty much like the aftermath of Revenge of the Sith. It was pretty much a direct sequel. Now, the Lords of the Sith took place a little bit after that. It wasn't quite like bumped up against Episode 3. It was close. I mean, it was within a few years, but, it was kind of close. Ronaldo says, for me, this is the one I least expected. Interesting. I love anime anthologies like Animatrix, so this really works for me. And he said it's called Star Wars Forces of Destiny.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, Forces of Destiny.
See, I knew you'd come up with the answer. And I knew Force was in there somewhere. I just couldn't think of the stupid title of the thing. But, yeah, I mean, this is one of those things that exactly, I mean, I have to say the Lando series was pretty much up there, but I will put it out there that this was pretty unexpected too. But I think that this could be really interesting because now they can get into some of the things like they do in these anthology books.
I'm not really.
You don't seem too invested on.
I'm not really invested yet. I mean,
this one's going to be a short segment, guys.
No pun intended.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm going to be short on the shorts.
So you're kind of at a wait and see kind of a thing
definitely.
then, right?
Yeah. I mean, for me, I like, it's the animation stuff. I mean, I've never been much of an anime fan.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Is it the animation? It's not so much the subject matter?
No, I mean, like, it's Star Wars. So I'm going to be invested
Well,
in
but
that.
I mean.
But, yeah, it's like, it's hard to get into sometimes, like, the animation of some things. Like, I've never been, like,
said the Clone Wars / Rebels fan.
Yeah, well, see, that's what I'm saying. Like, to me, that was done very, very well. It didn't look like, like Dragon Ball Z-ish or, some of the other, favorites like Pokemon or, any other the anime things that,
But Ronaldo brings up a good point. He says, considering the Jedi are similar to samurais, I think the style works.
Their style is considered to samurai, like as far as their whole religion and things. But I mean, like, it's a difference between watching a samurai movie versus a samurai like animation. So
man, it's great. Dueling the viewers.
On guard.
Me. Wait a minute, you and Ronaldo are the ones that are usually ganging up on me. I'm siding with you today, Ronaldo, and you're giving me a lot of great information, so I appreciate that. He says, also, the Star Wars manga comics are cool, and he's right, they are. They are actually very cool. I personally think that, and I know what you're saying, it's not even so much that it's animated, it's the style of animation.
Right, it's the style of animation. Like if it was done, like I said, like the Clone Wars, Rebels.
Well, but here's the thing, though. You compared it to, and I get it, and I think a little bit of resistance might have soured you on that, but, when I think of anime, I'm thinking, and again, I'm not as hardcore of an anime fan. I used to be more into it, but I'm thinking more like Fist of the North Star, Vampire Hunter D, stuff like that. The more, I would say, like mature stuff, not necessarily the Pokemon and, the more kiddie type stuff.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, even like the way they're drawn is just kind of like, I mean, even those shorts that we used to watch,
oh, you talking about those Clone Wars shorts?
Yeah, the Clone Wars shorts. Like, I hated the way they drew Anakin. It was just like,
yeah, I know.
It just looked goofy to me.
Well, I think what it is too is it takes you out of it. Like one of the things that I love about Clone Wars, especially because it dealt with the familiar characters, but also Rebels, is the fact that you eventually forgot you were watching an animated series.
That's what I'm saying. And see,
it felt like a movie.
And that's my whole point. Like with those shorts, I felt like I was watching exactly what it was. And then the one thing I will say about it, though, I did enjoy about them, and you and I brought this up on numerous occasions, that in those shorts, they actually did showcase like the true power of a Jedi, though. So when like Yoda like waves his hand, it's like hundreds of troopers and everything, all those little droids are like flying back. Like that's what I'm talking about. Now see, that makes more sense to me. Now I wish they would do that like on the other side, like just take those powers or just that the magnitude of the Force and put it like in the Clone Wars or something like that, or Rebels.
Well, but that's the problem I've always had with
even
either the more
movies.
mainstream stuff, but especially the movies. It's like they pick and choose when to use certain powers, and it's like, come on, full well they're going to use their powers for this, or in this regard, or in this in this method.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, if I can talk here. Ronaldo says, in anime anthologies, many times the animation is different in each segment, so there can be variety. He's really not letting it go, man. He wants to convert.
Like I said, I will give it a shot. I will watch it, just like I tried to watch Resistance. So I will try.
How many episodes did you make it in?
Like 3, maybe.
While were you even watching, or did you just have it on when you were like, doing stuff,
work, cleaning the room,
like it's in the background, just whatever. It's like, yeah, man, I watched Resistance.
I mean, I'm gonna try to do it again at some point.
You should, because actually, by the time it gets more into it, it really becomes good. But I mean, I get it though, because it is flat out made for kids. I mean, Star Wars is generally like geared towards kids, but this is like made. I mean, and I was there too. I mean, when I first watched it, I like, okay.
But we were the same way when we first started watching Rebels. Like, man, I hope this thing isn't like.
Yeah, I know.
But then once we got into it, we're like,
too.
All right, this is.
Yeah, well, I mean, and that's pretty. You know what? The Clone Wars is kind of like that too. I mean, wasn't quite as bad, but it was the same type of deal where you really have to overlook the kids part, because they do actually have some compelling characters and some really cool stuff. You just have to get past that. And I think that can be tough for some people.
Yeah. But
I mean, if you guys are into this Visions thing, let us know in the comment section below. This is one of those things that I too did not expect. And I am glad to see, though, that they're continuing to do something for different age groups, because I think that was one of the complaints that I always had, was they try to make a one-size-fits-all type of deal, where I like the fact that The Mandalorian is definitely geared more towards adults.
Oh, yeah.
Like kind of like older teens and then adults.
Yeah.
But then it's like, yes, Star Wars, the kids need that kind of thing, so make the content. It's like, look, it's not like we have to wait for a movie every 3 years. I mean, you could just make something for kids, make something for adults, make something for young teens, whatever it is. You can gear the content now. And especially now that they can spit out the content through Disney Plus, I mean, that just makes it even more so. So I am glad to see that that's happening. And again, as for me, I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys either chat here or put in the comments if you're watching the rebroadcast. I'm curious to see what you guys are thinking. But for me, I'll check it out. You know,
Yeah.
I'll see what it's all about. And if it's something that isn't for me, I'll move on. I'm not going to sit there and you know, make an I Hate Visions video like some of these Star Wars fans that, you know, I mean, it's kind of like, look, they're going to keep making Star Wars content. Definitely put out there what you like and what you don't like, because that's how the filmmakers and the showrunners basically know, like, okay, this, you know, people didn't really like this or they love this. But, you know, guys, just if it's not for you, just move on and wait for the next thing.
Move on.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So now we come to a series that we were featuring in a previous show, but it was when I was co-hosting with Dave Cossey, and it's a show called The Acolyte. Now, The Acolyte is the one that was done by, Leslie Headley? Or
Heatherly?
or yeah, something. Every time I hear that, though, it can't be that. Because otherwise I would have been thinking of the Top Gun line, I had Commander Heatherly in my sights.
Oh, yeah.
Which, for me, I mean, the reason why I remember that line so well, which is, I mean, it's totally stupid, but because it's Michael Ironside, and Commander Heatherly sounds like
a woman.
Kind of like either a woman or like just kind of a really lightweight name. Like you wouldn't expect like his character to
have that name.
Yeah. You know,
Hetland. Her last name is Hetland.
Yes. And this was basically something that we featured on the show, like I said, 2 or 3 weeks ago, where we were talking about, it was kind of like a Indiana Jones meets Star Wars thing. And the whole idea was it was going to be not so much about the characters as much as the geography, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah, this says the Acolyte, Leslie Hetland, Emmy Award nominated creator of the mind-bending series Russian Doll, brings a new Star Wars series to Disney Plus with The Acolyte. The Acolyte is a mystery thriller that will take the audience into a galaxy of shadowy secrets and emerging dark side powers in the final days of the High Republic era. So this is...
Yeah, this is a mystery thriller. And that was the part that was not... Again, when we covered it in the show, they basically just announced that she was doing it, and she kind of gave a little 1 or 2 sentence blurb about, what it was going to be and everything. But it wasn't...
Fleshed out almost.
And it really didn't reveal anything. I mean, it was just kind of like, okay, this is kind of what it is. But it's really exciting to me that this is a mystery thriller, because I love mysteries. Mysteries are one of my favorite genres of all time.
Mm-hmm.
Even more so than horror or anything like that. I love the whole mystery kind of thing. And in a mystery thriller just actually brings it up a notch. A mystery thriller set in the Star Wars universe, I think my head's going to explode.
Well, yeah, especially it's called The Acolyte. And so then, of course, the first thing you start thinking about is those Sith acolytes. And so when they're talking about like a galaxy of shadowy secrets and emerging dark side powers, in the final days of the High Republic era. So that just makes me wonder, like, okay, well, one, this is taking place in the High Republic era, so it's not dealing with like Vader and Palpatine and all those guys. However, it could be the onset of some things, like I said, that's to come. And I'm really like curious to kind of see like, okay, well, what dark side things haven't we seen yet?
Well, I'll tell you what I think it could be. Remember in the Phantom Menace when they said that the Sith had been extinct for like a millennia?
Yep.
Okay, well, this is only a couple hundred years before the Phantom Menace, and we know that at the time that Palpatine was starting his ascent to power, they'd been around for a little bit. You had Darth Bane, you had Darth Plagueis, you had all these guys, Revan, well, of course that's Old Republic, but still. I'm thinking that this is the beginnings of the modern day Sith. That's what I think it is. And at first, when I saw The Acolyte, I was sort of hoping it was... there's these guys in the Aftermath trilogy that are sort of like little Vader disciples. They're almost like the precursors to the Acolytes that we see on Exegol.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking, like, they were running around trying to collect all these dark side artifacts and things that, Vader left behind. Like, they supposedly were going to have his his lightsaber. Like, they had his lightsaber. They had all this stuff. Like a Sith lightsaber I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought maybe it would focus on that, which, I mean, that would have been cool. But the fact that it focuses on the High Republic era, this is really exciting to me. Because what I love about this is the fact that it's now moving from books to going into an actual live action, whether it's a movie or a TV show. It didn't actually matter to me. I just wanted to see the High Republic move into the realm of some sort of a series or movie.
Yeah, and I think if this is successful, I think we'll start going further back into the High Republic era where we can see more of that content, where that's stuff that what we're going to get in the books, we're probably going to start seeing on the screen at some point.
I hope so. I mean, I really hope so, because again, I mean, I think that the High Republic is something that they could really, I mean, it's a very interesting era, and keep in mind, we don't even know that much about it yet.
Right.
This is something that we've gotten a lot of information. Like, it's almost like the trailers that were for season 2 of The Mandalorian. They gave us a lot without giving us anything.
Right.
And that's basically what the High Republic has been. I mean, they've been giving us, okay, here's all the Jedi, and here's all the, villains, and, here's some of the Padawans, and, oh, look, a young Yoda, and, I mean, and it's going to take place here, and it's going to do this, and this is going to be the basic framework of the series, but it's not, they haven't given us anything. And like you said, the books are coming out, like the first one's in January. So, I mean, we're starting to now, we're going to get this world building. We're going to get the High Republic. Ronaldo says, I'm really hype about this.
Yeah, I really thought it was going to be a Dr. Aphra series, but it wasn't. A surprise to be sure, but a welcome one.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of surprised too. I thought maybe it could be Dr. Aphra. In fact, I think, Ronaldo, you were actually commenting on the show the last time when Dave and I were talking about it. Because Indiana Jones and Star Wars, well, who's that? That's Dr. Aphra. He goes on to say, personally, this is a series that I look forward to the most. For the first time, we will see a new era in live action focusing on the secrets of the dark side, expanding the universe of Star Wars.
Kim says, the Acolyte sounds like it's worth a watch. I hope they don't make it too woke.
Yeah, I know. I really hope they keep a lot of that stuff
contained.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The SJW thing, it's kind of like, okay, I get it. It's important in the world. Like, look, this is fantasy sci-fi.
Yeah, let's just...
can we just escape the problems of Earth for, like, one, do we have to start bringing... I mean... Let's not taint the world of Star Wars with earthly problems.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
This is not supposed to be social commentary here. This is entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
And I totally agree. I hope that they don't do that, but I don't think so, because first of all, it's a mystery thriller. I know that kind of sounds out of left field, but the fact that it's more of a specific genre film, if it was a political thriller, I'd say, okay, there might be some allegorical type stuff going on. But I really don't think that's the case, though. With this, I think it's... Plus, it's kind of like they're looking for artifacts and their dark side stuff. I mean, this is getting into the heavy lore, Jedi, Sith.
Holocrons, all that type of stuff.
Yeah, it's kind of the nerdier type of stuff in Star Wars. I don't think that there's a whole lot of room to, like... Oh, look, we're going to make this an allegory for this thing that's going on in the world today or something. I mean, I just don't think that that's the case. But I'm kind of with Ronaldo, though. I think that this is one of the ones I am probably looking forward to the most. It's the one that intrigues me for all the reasons that he said, because I didn't really expect that to be the case.
Yeah. I'm really excited for this one. Is this the last one on the docket today?
It is. I mean, unless,
Okay.
Of course, there's always the, hey, if there's anything. Because, look, there's a lot of stuff announced. I wasn't going to make.
Yeah. And some things that probably weren't even announced, like the Boba Fett thing.
Some people. Right, exactly. I
But-
mean, and we can go on talking about that. The other thing that I got to ask, too, I should have asked it before we, went live, but do we have clear your mind questions today?
No, we don't.
All right. Well, I'm glad that I didn't go to the segment and, because then it'd be like, all right, anybody. But hey, if you guys want, chat in a question right now and we'll do it and clear your mind.
But I actually do have one question that I'm going to pose to you at the very end of this. But anywho, yeah, the Acolyte, I think that's going to be cool. I think that's going to be interesting. We've seen a lot of the Jedi, or we're going to see a lot of the Jedi in the sense of the books. We've heard things like in the Rise of Skywalker, things like that. But I think now we really want to see some of the dark side stuff. I think a lot of people.
We really haven't seen that much.
No, that's what I'm saying. I think now is a time where we can see, like, okay, people who really love like Vader, the Emperor, and all that type of stuff. Well, and there's a lot of people who are like fans of Bane, Revan, and all those characters.
Mm-hmm.
So now, if we can kind of see, like, okay, well, let's look into their history and how the Sith work, because we can kind of know how the Jedi work, but we don't know how the Sith operate. Like, what are their? We know the rule of two and everything, but okay, like I said, do they have Jedi trials or Sith trials, or how do you become?
Yeah, they're trying to kill each other, basically.
Well, I mean, how do you become a Sith Lord before,
Well, right, like there's a Sith Acolyte. It's like, is an Acolyte a Padawan?
Yeah, is that a rank or,
Well, and the other thing, too, is that, okay, the show is called The Acolyte. Well, who's that referring to?
Exactly.
Is that some sort of Sith in training? Is it, kind of like more of a disciple-ish kind of thing? Or, like they're just following the teachings of, who knows?
Yep.
I mean, they alluded to the fact it was a little bit more based on geography and stuff like that. But again, I don't think it could be understated enough, as Ronaldo pointed out, that, hey, this is taking place in a brand new era that we've never seen.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's probably one of the most exciting things. Now, I think that it's a little bit, I think it's significant. I'll put it like that. I think it's significant that this is happening toward the end of the High Republic.
Right.
And I think that it's happening because they don't want to trap anybody into any kind of story or, paint somebody in a corner or anything like that. They need to leave most of the High Republic intact so that authors, comic book story creators, or if they want to do some more live action stuff, they need to leave that somewhat open for stories to be told freely.
Yeah, I mean, and not only that, but like you said, you have at that period, like, okay, well, the Sith have been gone for millennia, so like now at some point that tide has to start coming back into the fray.
Yeah, you would think so. I would hope that it really starts to deal with this stuff, and it makes me wonder. I mean, the mystery you can see, because obviously there might be some sort of a mysterious thing they have to do or solve or whatever, but kind of like a mystery thriller. Just knowing that genre, it makes you wonder how they're going to present this.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, I can see, like, there may be some things in the Force that have been activated or some things in the Force that they're feeling that they haven't felt before. And they're like, okay, well, what the heck is that? We need to, dispatch some people to go just figure out what this is, or maybe somebody might be Force sensitive and starting to have some reactions to things. And they're like, oh, I've heard about this before, but, I heard about this old myth or this old ritual that this one group of people called the Sith used to do, but it kind of sounds like that, but I'm not sure. Well, let's go look look for it. So, yeah, I can see it.
Yeah, it's going to be, well, it'll be really interesting either way. But, again, let us know in the comment section, guys, what you guys are thinking. I mean, is this another one that you're really excited about seeing? Is there anything in everything that we've covered that you're not excited to see? Because, there's a lot of things that were announced today besides this project. Is there anything that was announced that you're not excited to see? Kim says, something dark side. Yes, one of the best lines ever and pretty close to the movie lore about the Sith. Oh, yeah, don't get me started on the whole Family Guy stuff, man. That was like... It. Although Blue Harvest still, I think, remains to be my favorite, though. I think it's... Yeah, there's just so many great lines in that. But, hey, leave a comment in the comment section. be sure to check out our other videos. And of course, hey, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell. So you know what? I know we got some other stuff that we're going to talk about. So let's just do it in this. We're going to clear your mind. All right, so normally we would be taking specific questions that audience members sent in. We took a little bit because we really wanted to focus on this, but hey, if you guys have any questions live in the chat right now that you want us to answer, fire away. Or if you guys are watching the rebroadcast, don't forget, we do check the comments regularly and we do interact with everybody on there. So, if there's something that you want to ask there, ask it, we'll answer it. Or maybe, hey, if it's good enough and we really want to focus on it, hey, we'll just put it in the show for the next week. All right. So wrapping a lot of this stuff up when we're talking about all these announcements and things that were made. Now, I know there was things that you said you wanted to bring up. So, we can, I guess, have you do that first because it'll probably spawn a bunch of discussion. But, be thinking about that, guys. There's a lot of really significant things that are happening in the world of Star Wars right now that I think are not only exciting, I think they're promising. And that's something I have not been able to say for quite some time. Whenever a sequel trilogy movie came out, it's kind of like, okay, well, I hope it's good. I hope it's, I hope it doesn't divide the fan base too much. And I hope, the last thing was The Force Awakens. That was the last time everybody was kind of cool. And of course, Rogue One, everybody generally liked that. And everybody did generally like Solo. So, really, it was The Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker that kind of tweaked people out, particularly The Last Jedi.
Yeah, definitely.
To where, Rian Johnson's getting like daily tweets of,
definitely.
I hope you die for destroying my childhood or whatever.
Right.
I had to deal with some of that even in another Star Wars group where, they were talking about Kelly Marie Tran again. And I was kind of like, guys, look, bottom line, it's like, I didn't think the Rose character was really that necessary. I'll admit it. But, okay, at the end of the day, pretty much an actress played a character that you didn't really like or think was necessary. No crime was committed.
Right. All right. So you mentioned the word promise. So that's where this goes. So out of all of these releases that we've heard, your top 3 that you're most looking forward to seeing?
Our first question today comes from Daryl Sanders.
This question
Daryl writes,
right.
what are your top 3 moments or top 3 series that I'm looking forward to most? Is that it? Obi-Wan.
Obi-Wan.
Hands down.
Okay.
Wow, it's so tough, man. Probably Obi-Wan, Ahsoka.
I'll say Obi-Wan again.
Yeah, right. Could Obi-Wan be counted twice? Obi-Wan, Ahsoka, and yeah, I think I'm gonna go with Acolyte. I think those are gonna be my top 3. The answer obviously is I'm looking forward to all of them.
Oh yeah.
To varying degrees, of course. But if I had to pick 3, Obi-Wan's number 1, Ahsoka's number 2, Acolyte's number 3.
What? No Boba Fett?
Well, but it wasn't officially announced.
Okay.
You worded it like
I give up.
But if that's the case, then the thing is, though, with Boba Fett is that we're getting enough of him on The Mandalorian, whereas The Acolyte is taking place in this brand new time period, and who knows what we're going to see
and
now.
a new genre, too.
Yeah, exactly. So, you have to think about this in the terms of, after you see the first couple episodes, maybe you're like, well, you know what? It's okay. Let's see what that Boba Fett thing's all about,
I'm going to go with Ahsoka, Rogue Squadron, and Acolyte.
Well, Rogue Squad. Well, yeah, okay. I forgot about that. I was sticking mostly with the series. But you know what? I'm still gonna keep that though. Rogue Squadron would probably be my number 4, and then Boba Fett would be probably number 5. Although I am extremely looking forward to that if that comes to fruition. Ronaldo's top 3: The Acolyte, Rogue Squadron, Obi-Wan Kenobi. Now, you know what's funny about this? I'd be willing to bet money that we'll end up like loving like Andor or something like the most, right? Like these are the things that we're looking forward to the most, but then it ends up being
something we had like, I mean, not to say we didn't want to see it, but
would be hilarious if you come out like, dude, that Visions program is just like the best Star Wars thing ever.
It would serve me right.
It would. It really would. Or, hey, don't forget, like I said, normally we don't really, I think I said this earlier in the show, or we don't usually try to give too much press to we got this covered, because most of their stuff's like,
right.
It's almost like that YouTube guy, Mike Zero, who's just like out there, man. But they did get it right, from what I understand, where there is going to be, and Ronaldo chatted that in. What about a droid story? Yeah, about R2-D2 and C-3PO. And I have to say, okay, wait a minute. Is that an animated thing or a live action thing?
Droid story?
Yeah.
You want to say a Toy Story?
I know. It's it's like it's right there, and it sounds like that's what you're saying too.
Yeah.
Did they announce another Toy Story, by the way? I thought they did.
They might have.
It's going to be like the Friday the 13th series for Pixar, I'm telling you. It's Toy Story 27.
Right, Fast and Furious.
Right?
As Lucasfilm continues to develop new stories, the intersection of animation and visual effects offers a new opportunity to explore. Lucasfilm Animation will be teaming up with Lucasfilm Visual Effects team, Industrial Light and Magic, to develop a special Star Wars adventure for Disney Plus, A Droid Story. This epic journey will introduce us to a new hero guided by legendary duo R2-D2 and C-3PO. So Anthony Daniels still is probably going to be in Star Wars until he gets up out of here, which is fine with me.
Oh, yeah. Well, look, it's gotten to the point where it's going to be sad when Anthony Daniels dies, because that guy has literally been in every Star Wars project ever. And in fact, I haven't, I started reading his autobiography, which was basically, he gave a little bit, but it was really chronicling his, the whole making of Star Wars and his experiences and stuff like that through the original trilogy and stuff. And it's phenomenal, man. I mean, he's so entertaining. I have to get back to it. I put it away, and I had to put it, like I had to store my actual books, because usually, I read off of the iPad or something, but this one, somebody gave it to me as a gift, and I was reading the book, and I stuck it somewhere, and I forgot about it, but it's so good. And that guy is so underappreciated for what he's done. I mean, we did that whole tribute to David Prowse not too long ago after he passed, unfortunately, but you can argue that Anthony Daniels has done as much or more.
Oh, yeah.
As far as, and I'm not just talking about the fact that he's been in more stuff, but he's been towing the line for Star Wars. He's there for the fans, a lot like David Prowse was, but he's such a vital part of the whole thing. Ronaldo's like, if they give me my beloved gunk droid, I'm in. Yes, the gunk droid. There was that whole meme that they had where like gunk a Star Wars story or something like that. And, and they actually had like this whole poster they made for it. It was hilarious. But yeah, I mean, I was always wondering about a lot of these things. And I think they could do that, because even though it did get to me after a while where they had that one Clone Wars story arc that seemed to go on forever when the droids were lost, trapped on some weird sand planet.
Yeah.
Like yet another one. It was just like, man. But
especially when there was like a whole cool story that was going on somewhere else that you want to get back to.
What's the name of that? What's the name of that one droid in Rebels? The one that I said kind of reminded me of Patrick.
Oh, I don't remember the number designation of him.
Yeah,
I know what you're talking about.
You know what I'm talking about?
I do remember that episode.
He's kind of like that Death Star droid looking thing. Yeah. See, you get somebody like him. You get droid like K2SO. I mean,
HK.
Yeah. or Mr. Bones. I mean, man, there's been so many compelling droid characters, actually. I would totally love to see. You could do this whole, like, epic droid story.
That's what they're apparently.
Well, I mean, I it's like Andy's up to speed. But, I mean, that's not what I mean. I mean, it's kind of like I mean, granted, I know it's like a new batch of droids led by them, but that's going to be a weird series, though, if you think about
They're
it.
going to be a bad batch.
Uh-huh.
Ronaldo says, it seems to me that they're not only making content for all ages, but for all tastes. Definitely. Also, for those who like Ahsoka, they have, for those of you who like Ahsoka, they have a series. If you like airplane movies, you have Rogue Squadron. If you're interested in the dark side, they give you the Acolyte. Or if you're into anime, you have Visions. Yep.
Yeah, you bring up a good point that they seem to be trying to really expand and make content for a lot of various. It's not even just age groups. It's kind of like, okay, if you're into this specific thing or if you're into that specific thing.
Well, yeah, that's why I say, I can't wait to see this whole Rogue Squadron thing, because it's totally giving me my Top Gun vibes.
Oh, and I have no doubt that it's going to basically be like that. I mean, it's going to be, and the thing that's done by Patty Jenkins.
Yeah, the fact that her dad was a fighter pilot too, and
sure, you know what I'm hoping it is?
Hmm?
I hope it's basically the Star Wars version of Red Tails.
Yeah, I could see
which
that. Ironically
was done by George Lucas.
Right.
But, I can, that's the kind of thing, or, a lot of these other, period piece movies or like historical movies or something like that. I think I have a lot of hope for the way they're going to handle that. And it's kind of cool because even though we really didn't talk about it that much this episode, it is interesting that this is going to be the next film.
Mm-hmm.
That they chose something that is essentially, it would almost be like Twilight Shadow Company or Inferno Squad or.
Well, see, this is one I've been wanting a movie like this for years. So I'm like chomping at the bit to get to this movie.
Yeah, I think it'll be really interesting. I mean, because I've read a lot of they didn't really do too much with the Rogue Squadron. They've been in some of the new canon books, but for the most part, it's been like the expanded universes where you had like Rogue Squadron series, you had all this stuff, and it's
the
like
game.
Yeah, the game, exactly. So I mean, Rogue Squadron is probably the most famous squadron in all of Star Wars, and to actually have it, because I think you're right. I think it's going to be kind of like a Top Gun type of thing, Red Tails kind of deal or whatever. And then I think that there's a lot they can do, and it's going to be a Star Wars movie that's more like Rogue One, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved Rogue One.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think Rogue One showed you that they can, and same thing with The Mandalorian. I mean, sure, now you're getting Ahsoka and things like that, but if you think about it, the Jedi and the Force and all that are really not that present in The Mandalorian.
Right.
So I think that it's one of those things that The Mandalorian especially, because that's what has been presented to us, shows us that a straight-up war movie type of situation or something without the mystical parts of it could actually work.
Ronaldo has a question. How likely do you think that how likely do you think it is that they will use characters from the canon novels and comics?
That is something that I have been wondering myself, because they're introducing and announcing an awful lot of content here.
Mm-hmm.
And it just seems to me unlikely that you wouldn't pull some of these people. And because
definitely.
You have all this canon, I mean, you could do it. I mean, granted, it brushes up against some of these things, but it's not necessarily like, okay, I'm taking the Aftermath trilogy and making it a movie or something. I mean, but that said, there's plenty of room, particularly in Ahsoka, moving forward in The Mandalorian.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly Obi-Wan. I'm trying to think of what else on, that's been, that they could do.
Well, I mean, like you said, The Mandalorian, they've had like Cobb Vanth and all that,
Sure. I mean, and they're starting to do it now, and that's the thing, is that it would be inconceivable to me that they wouldn't bring in characters from, from the canon novels.
Ronaldo says, by the way, Patty Jenkins is an excellent decision. She's a great director. I think she'll do an excellent job.
Yeah, well, Wonder Woman 1984 has been getting just like crazy good reviews. It's going to be released on HBO Max on Christmas Day.
Yep.
So, we'll be looking, and it's going to be in theaters too, if any of them are open.
Yeah, for those who still can go to them.
For those who can actually go to the theaters, you can actually watch it there. For the rest of us, because I subscribed to HBO Max like 2 or 3 days ago.
Okay.
Because I'm like, okay, man, if they're putting out all these movies on it now, and then, of course, they've been threatening to put the Justice League, the Zack Snyder version, they're going to put that out there. So, and I was going to, like, wait till it was closer to that. But then when they started doing that, and then Wonder Woman's coming out on it, I'm like, okay, fine, I'll just bite the bullet and subscribe to this stupid thing. But he basically also says, Ronaldo, I can see them using Aftermath characters in the Rangers of the New Republic. That was one I actually forgot to put a title card up on. Was Rangers of the New Republic.
Yes, the Power Rangers of the New Republic.
That one basically takes place
during the Mandalorian.
Yeah, it's around during the time of the Mandalorian, but I forgot what's the deal with it. What's the deal with
Well, they really didn't give you much honestly to it. Like I said, it takes
Is that
place...
one of the ones where they just said, yeah, it takes place during the Mandalorian and it's coming out at some point?
Yeah, pretty much.
Sounds kind of like another Rogue One type of, or a Rogue Squadron kind of thing, where it's...
Yeah, it's like a live-action series from executive producers Favreau and Filoni, and it would intersect with feature stories and culminate into a climactic story event.
You think it might feature, like, how they've been featuring a couple of those New Republic pilots?
Yeah, I was just about to say it.
You think that maybe it's going to parlay itself into, the series? And that's what I'm hoping. Finally, Lucasfilm, Disney, whoever.
The gods that be.
Yeah, is actually now taking the entire canon and interweaving it. I always thought it was so bad that Star Wars basically had this segregated medium. It's like you had your movies and you had your books and you had your comics, and never shall the twain meet, or twain shall meet, or whatever the saying is. I mean, it's like they never really brought in characters from the animated series into the movies, or vice versa. And I always thought that was really a bad decision. And now, of course, it started with Rebels, that they started kind of interchanging them a little bit, and with Rogue One. But, I think that this is the most exciting time.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think I've been this excited since, like, the days of, Force Awakens was coming out or something like that.
When we first found out that they're making new Star Wars content.
Yeah, exactly, because they're doing something that I've always wanted them to do. Actually, they're doing two things. Number one, they're giving us genre films and series. Number two, they're actually starting to do these whole cross-platform, like bringing in, characters from the novels into the films, and, vice versa, and all this other stuff, where they're really starting to cross-populate the entire universe, which only makes sense.
Yeah, it's fun times, man. I can't wait.
Yeah, it's gonna be
starting with the books, the books and the Bad Batch next month.
Yeah, it's gonna be fantastic, and I'm sure that look, this isn't the end here. I mean, we're gonna, I'm sure, be talking about the fallout from this thing. I mean, maybe that's not the best word, because that kind of sounds negative, but
the follow-up, I should.
Yes, I mean, this isn't the end. They just made this announcement. I'm sure we're going to get all kinds of updates from it. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of other stuff announced, I'm sure. So, we're going to stay on top of that for you guys. And as always, we'll be discussing it. Because, again, the idea is that we're a community of Star Wars fans that likes to get together through our YouTube platform here, Twitch, our Facebook group too. We also go live to that. So, check out Head to Head, as I keep messing up our own thing. Head to Head, a Star Wars community. It's basically an extension of the show, but on Facebook. And of course, as always, you can hit us up at Head to Head SW on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. But yeah, this is basically, it's not so much like a news show or whatever. It's kind of like a discussion show. We like to get together, and you guys are
more than welcome to share your thoughts, opinions, comments, concerns, jokes, all of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just basically like we're all hanging out every Friday night. And don't forget, this Monday, we're going to be reviewing the latest Mandalorian episode, the one that came out today, which is called The Believer.
Yep.
Okay. So
Then I saw her face.
I know. It would have been so funny if they had actually opened with that. But we're going to be reviewing that Monday night at 8. So, be sure to check back with us then. And then, of course, we'll be right back here next Friday at 8 o'clock, ready to talk some more Star Wars with you guys. And I'm sure there's probably going to be another bunch of stuff.
News. Yep.
I mean, hey, there was some stuff that I know we pretty much omitted today. Like, all right, this would be cool because, just as a little bit of a sneak peek, maybe we can bring that whole Mandalorian prequel they were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's plenty of things to discuss and to watch out for in the world of Star Wars. And that, after all, is why we're fans. So I want to thank you guys for joining us tonight. Hopefully you'll be back with us Monday night at 8. If not, definitely next Friday at 8. And I think it's going to do it for our show tonight.
All right.
All right. I'm Eric Vansel.
And I'm Daryl Sanders.
May the Force be with you.
Always.
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter @HeadToHeadSW. Submit your questions for our next show. Visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time, may the Force be with you, always.